listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is March 30th, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Sunday?
Oh, Spencer, hello. Good afternoon to you. I am doing pretty well. I mentioned last week on the show I've been pretty sick. I'm still a little under the weather, but I'm getting back to 100%. So feeling a lot better this week. It's been a bit more. I'm starting to get back into more of normal stuff, and thankfully getting some more regular sleep, which is much better for my brain, and I kind of need that. So I'm here. We're in the midst of a pretty good week of WoW, and well, you know, we got some. We're now in that spot where we're probably only a couple weeks out from patch, so we're already kind of holding our breath again. But this is just how WoW works now. You get a patch every 2 months, which is cool. But it's like, man, the roller coaster just keeps rolling.
It is very weird to think that we're a couple weeks out from a .5 patch. That just seems really weird. It doesn't quite register for me that's how close we are. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we're coming up on the 2 month part, and that is what it is. We will see that then, and we're not even like. Are we halfway through the renown journey for the raid yet? I don't even think we're halfway through the renown journey for the raid.
No, yeah. I don't know. I think it tops out like 20 or something, and we hit 5 this week or something. I mean, we're probably like a month out from patch. Like, don't get me wrong, 3 weeks, something like 3 weeks from this week's reset. So it's still a couple weeks away, but we're getting to that point where PTR is kind of locking in. Live game stuff is a little bit more quiet from the changes that we've seen lately this week. Like there's definitely some changes to talk about, but it was like we knew in advance when we recorded last week the big class tuning that came through this week, and we don't have something similar coming up for this reset, stuff like that. So this is one of these weeks. This week coming up is one of those weeks where they made a big bunch of changes. They're going to let stuff settle and then see how it shakes out a little bit more.
Yeah. Now, I'll hit the top of this show by just letting everyone know that I have to travel to Vegas for a convention that I need to go to that is not WoW related, is work related. And so I will be traveling from this Thursday until the following Friday, which means, well, actually technically following Saturday. I don't get home until midday on the following Saturday. I have an overnight flight on Friday. But which happens when you travel from West Coast to East Coast because of the time difference, it chalks on those 3 hours, which means that trying to actually travel from an airport back home afterwards is tricky. Anyways, so this means that next week's episode, we are going to be recording today, and we're going to essentially hit it with, this is what's going on this week, and it'll be a shorter one so folks can actually get a copy of it. We want to be sure that we're not in a situation where we're A, skipping a week of an episode, and B, recording something on like the Saturday before reset for what's happening that week in World of Warcraft. That just doesn't compute. So not to mention I would be exhausted on that Saturday when we did it, which means it'd probably be the Sunday, which is when we record the next week's episode anyways. So recording the previous week's and the next week's doesn't make much sense. So that's how we're going to do it, which means I'll time release the episodes a little bit so people aren't getting confused as to which one's which. But it'll be a double record today that we're doing, so we won't have all of the juicy details of what happened, 5 or 6 days from now in the middle of the week when we get another balance tuning pass and more bans happen and other craziness happens. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. Okay. Anyways, this past week in World of Warcraft was another big, I guess, tuning adjustment to classes that has then created a bunch of work for me. I, as everyone knows by this point, have been making the transition over to an Evoker playing. Initially was going to be Augmentation, and then Aug got hit so hard that it essentially vanished from the face of the earth and is now no longer played inside Mythic Rating. So then I am switching over to playing Devastation. I've been learning the Devastation rotation, and I found a critical flaw in something I've been doing. You know those really helpful graphical effects that appear on your screen, Jason, when like procs happen and you're supposed to be able to see what's happening with things. Devastation has a lot of procs, and they don't have visual effects for all of them. And one of the procs that is important, because their rotation revolves around essentially creating a chain of events taking place where one proc then lets you cast a spell, which creates more procs of a different spell, which then lets you cast procs of the original spell, which then, like, it's this big circle that can happen with a rotation. I guess that's why they call it a rotation. Anyways, those procs were not registering properly in my UI, and so I actually had to create a weak aura to have those procs register properly, which then explained some of the damage differential that I've been seeing on the class that I wasn't enjoying. So I then have fixed that, which seems to have improved some of the damage difference that I've been seeing. So I'm hoping tonight in Raid, things are a little bit smoother as far as damage goes for me, which will feel good. For those who are curious, it's Burnout was the ability that was not registering as a proc anywhere. And Burnout only stacks to 2, and so I had a lot of situations where I had a Burnout proc that was just being carried, and I'd run out of Essence, because the Burnout procs would have expired by the time I essentially went to use something like that, as opposed to just using them preemptively when they came up, because I didn't notice they were coming up, which meant that essentially my rotation was broken. And so I would hit these moments where I'd run out of Essence, which I was hitting more often than the average evoker should be hitting. So that created a bunch of issues. Anyway, so that's been resolved. And of course, just as I get that sort of resolved in my UI, this week, because of the changes and buffs that happened to Evoker, Flame Shaper is now above Scale Commander, and I'd been learning Scale Commander because everyone had been playing Scale Commander. So I'm now learning different hero abilities, so I spent a chunk of this week doing the homework of learning how to play Flame Shaper, which I will say I find a lot more fun than playing Scale Commander. So that has been a lot of my week, is the research and the breaking things down and going through logs and reading up on tips and tricks and, figuring out a new set of rotation and new things to track. And I will, the thing that still baffles me, because I've been maintaining my Druid too. My Druid is 663 and is still, I still cap out Mythic Plus dungeons for the week, and it's, 2600 IO, and it's doing fine as far as, my Druid goes. But it's been very funny, because when I'm casting Star Surges and they're hitting targets for like a critical strike of 20 to 2.5 million, not quite 3 million kind of range is like the highest I'll see, unless the target's vulnerable, in which case like first boss of Floodgate or something, right, where it has a big vulnerability phase and you're hitting it for like 6 mil, and that feels really good. The funny thing about Evoker is, with Flameshaper build in particular, one of their spells can crit for like 9.5 or 10 million damage, and you have 2 charges of it. And so you can have these windows where you're just like bam, bam, and essentially you've done 23 million damage to something in that window of time. And it feels incredible. It feels great to do that. And you're like, Boomkin has never had something like that really felt like that, other than Full Moon at the beginning of Shadowlands, when you were calling in full moons to hit stuff and just blowing it up. There hasn't been an ability that hits like that. So I have been enjoying Flameshaper a lot more. And I'm hoping that tonight's raid goes well and that stuff goes well. But yeah, a lot of my week has been doing that. So I did a lot of keys, as per usual. And I had to catch up my Druid on Cress, which has meant that a lot of those keys were like just all over the place. I think at one point I was running 2s with someone's alts just to... You still get 10 Rune Crest for running a 2. And I was just like cranking through a whole bunch of 2s for somebody to help them out, because this past week was the do 4 Mythic Plus dungeons and get a heroic reward. So my first 4 Mythic Plus dungeons were just +2s, helping people out and doing, it was like 3.8 million DPS overall for a dungeon, just spamming, Starfalls on ginormous packs that were being pulled, and having a good old time doing that. But it's been a bit of a week of just like relearning, repracticing, trying to get muscle memory back in for like whenever you change your rotation, there's certain things your brain wants to do that is so ingrained from your practice that you've done previously that it's hard to change those neural pathways basically in your head to be like, hey, when, I'm playing Scale Commander, I basically cast my Fire Breath followed by, my other empowered spell immediately. But when I'm playing Flameshaper, I actually weave 2 spells in between those 2 casts. And so to break the muscle memory of always casting these things back to back and insert something in the middle is actually tricky to do. And so it's been a bit of a week of relearning that, which, I guess has been going well. But the team's doing good. The team is now working on sticks and trying to get sticks down. So we've had some pretty good progress in Mythic, for those who are curious. And we're looking forward to getting that down this week and moving on and seeing what's next and getting into, essentially one of the brick walls that everyone was hitting. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Nice. Yeah. I'm kind of having a similar thing, I guess, right now with Warrior 4-piece, right? Because what happens is there's not a lot of visual feedback that it's active. So I need to grab a weak aura to track it or something, because the way that it works for Prot Warrior is when you take damage, you have a chance to proc your Luck of the Draw. And then once it's active, you get a damage buff. And with the 4-piece, the big thing is your shield slam crits reduce the cooldown on your shield charge by like 12 seconds or something. It's a lot.
Right.
And shield charge is like a 45-second cooldown. It's a big button that does a big boom. It does a big bunch of damage. It stuns your main target. It generates a bunch of rage. It grants you a bunch of shield block uptime. It's a great button, so you want to push it a lot. And sometimes I just don't know. I'm like sitting there looking at my cooldown timer on shield charge to figure out whether or not my 4-piece is rolling. So
right.
I probably need some more. It's weird because they added a ton of visual information lately to like different buffs and cooldowns that get tracked like on your personal resource bar, but not this one. So
yeah,
I may need to find something else to use.
The only thing that shows up for when burnout procs are active is your living flame button gets the glow that you have a proc, and that's it. Whereas, your focus for me is rarely on, like, I really try not to have my focus on my action bars. That isn't a useful place for my eyes to be during any kind of encounter. So I need the middle of the screen effects for things to happen. And there's certain procs that definitely still create, like your essence bursts create those, either side of your character concave kind of shapes where you're like, hey, okay, there's something has happened, right? I can pay attention to that happening. And similarly with there's a Firestorm ability that will have a proc that goes over your character, but there's nothing for burnout. And I'm like, I do feel like there should have been an additional set of concaves essentially added to the game for burnout procs to be able to show that. It's such an essential part of your rotation that, yeah, they need something. And I know tier sets are a little bit different in that sense because they kind of come and go. But I would certainly recommend to those who are currently playing around with the new tier set and doing some raiding content to just, go to WIGO, essentially it's WAIGO, and look up a weak aura that has essentially their tier set and a way of tracking it, because it can certainly be helpful. I know for Devastation Evokers, you only want to cast Flame Breath when you have procs of your tier set. And you don't want to cast essentially your other empowered spell when you have when you actually have those procs up. So you actually hold casts based upon where your procs are at with your tier set. And there's certain abilities that obviously force those procs. So you want to be using those directly before using Flame Breath. And it's like tracking those sorts of things becomes important. And a weak aura is easy to right click and delete after you've sort of moved on from the tier set next season. But for this season, it's going to be helpful to have. And I was surprised that a class would have a proc that is so critically essential to its rotation not tracked somewhere on their screen in a visual other than a little glow on their action bar. So it was a similar thing with that, where it's like,
and like anything can make a button glow too. Sometimes there's multiple effects that make a spell glow, and so you never But I don't know. I think for me, I probably want to grab a weak aura tracker for Luck of the Draw. So something to think about, as people are collecting their 4 sets and trying to, pick up a new play style. For us, we still have one more raid night for the week tonight. But it's been a pretty good week. Last week when we spoke, we were on the verge of looking at Muggsy. We put Muggsy down on Sunday, which was nice. It's a pretty complex fight. It requires a lot of buy-in from the entire team on the strat. Otherwise, it kind of doesn't work. And it's been a bit of a struggle. There's some people that are just not on board with like buying into the strat, which then, it's just created a lot of frustration on that fight. Our plan was to skip normal straight through to One-Armed Bandit, because somebody had run LFR and gotten all their rep for the week, but it didn't really work that way, because you still had to once you get the rep, then you have to pick up the quest.
Yeah.
And then also I think the skip was actually bugged or something early this week, so it didn't do some good on Tuesday.
The skip was one of the funniest things I've seen. I pugged into a normal earlier in the week, and someone used the skip, and the door that goes between Mugsy and One Armed Bandit is locked. So you literally skip past One Armed Bandit, but then can't work your way backwards. So you skip 2 Mugsy and can do Mugsy and do Gallywix, but you can't go backwards through the raid that way to go down the ramps to One Armed Bandit. You actually have to still go through the front of the raid to get to One Armed Bandit.
That's funny.
It's like that door just needs to be unlocked so you can get through it, so you can actually work your way backwards if you want to. It's the silliest thing that I could see happening, but it happened.
Yeah, sometimes the raid skips are just weird. It's like, I don't know. But anyway, that was the plan for Tuesday, sort of, if this one guy had time to do LFR during the day, which he did, but then because of the way it works, like it wasn't actually unlocked. So we did probably would end up being our last full normal clear, like to start the week. And like, dude, between all of the power that we're getting, the overall tuning, and having a 3% buff already, like the normal fights already just die to the point where nothing even happens. So we got through that pretty quick, and I think we got through like 5 bosses on heroic in the same night, like 13 bosses or whatever in 2 hours. That was a lot for this early in the season. The Mugsy reclear was horrendous. It was almost as bad as the prog kill. Like it took most of Wednesday. We had a little bit of time to look at Galley, so we have all night for Galley tonight. I'm not expecting AOTC tonight, but maybe. It just depends on kind of who shows up, who I bring, and how people can kind of lock in and execute. But, I think we'll probably need more pulls than we can squeeze into 2 hours tonight, but we'll see. But Raid's feeling pretty good. I'm bringing 25 plus most nights, and, a big healthy group, and just tearing through bosses and tossing out loot. One thing I like about the raid so far, at least for these like reclears and heroic and stuff, is like the raid leader burden is a lot lower than they've done in some raids, even compared to Palace. I don't have to do so much raid group Tetris with who's where and odd even split. I do have to split for stuff, but it's not as mission critical as it was even in Palace. There's no fight like Ovanax where I have to direct traffic around the entire raid the whole fight. So it's cool. It's fun to just sit down and crush bosses. Dungeons this week, my vault's done. I haven't done an absurd amount of dungeons at this point because now we're at the point where everybody's got 10 plus keys in abundance. Actually got my first plus 12 in time this week at Dark Flame Cleft. So that felt nice. 1/8 of the way there to Resilient Keys. Just need 7 more 12s. And one cool thing is somebody from the team that I play with frequently, he's just been plugging keys just nonstop. I think he's 3K rating now, and he has at least plus 12 resilience. So once you know somebody that has it, then you can really start cycling through 12s and getting stuff timed, because their key will re-roll to a different dungeon even if you brick the timer. So you just have opportunities to find, now more and more people have 12s, and then you find more 12s to do. So it didn't really feel bad. We actually did a 12 floodgate, which I think is still probably the hardest dungeon in the pool. And we were only off by like 1 wipe, like just clean it up a little bit, and that would have been done. So I'm at like 2676 rating on the Warrior, which is pretty nice. Warrior's, gearing up a ton as a result of just the way the season's structured, and just had some pretty good luck with some key pieces. She's up to like 662 equipped, and I still have like champ boots on or something. So graduated out of Runed Crests. I crafted a shield this week without an embellishment, just because now with the price of everything, it's like 60 gilded for a 675 crafted piece is fine. Like that feels fine to do.
Yeah, the acquisition's really easy too. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole economy just feels so much better around that. So it's like, okay, I have sparks. Like, what's the point of letting it sit here? Let's get some item level. I actually got a hero track Eye of Kazan out of the dungeon event chest, so I really lucked out on that. That's a super nice trinket for raid, and it's one that a lot of people are gunning for. I don't need to worry about it at this point, I guess. So, I mean, just the Warrior, blessed as always, unlike my poor druid. I spent most of my in-game time this week actually has been delves and just playing solo, doing 11s on the Warrior and 8s on the monk and druid. Monk is like already new 4-piece, has a couple nice hero pieces, whatever. Druid has absolutely nothing. Like just trinkets galore, That's all the poor druid gets. Just can't round stuff out. It's kind of weird. So I'm hoping that like with Vault this week coming up and everything, I can at least start like if I can get one hero piece on the druid, then I can justify using some catalyst charges on champ pieces and start rounding out the bonus. But I mean, delves, man, they're just super fun. I don't know what it is. Part of it is the tuning, right? Like they're just tuned easier. So you can move through them faster, which feels better. But I think also the way they've laid out the new stories, the way they've adjusted some of the existing stories so that the mechanics are just less obnoxious to handle. And having the underpin packs scattered throughout the dungeon that you want to hunt down and kill for bonuses feels really cool. So I've been having a great time in there. I'm probably going to start doing 11s on the monk this week because, man, they're super lucrative for the Nemesis Strong box and for Gilded Crests for your first 3 of the week on 11. And if you use your Delver's Bounty map on an 11, you get another 10 Gilded Crests. So I could get the monk to a pretty high echelon of power just from doing that stuff. My brand is max level now. I finished my Delver's journey, which means I've unlocked the Cultist Key campsite. I have all the campsite screens now that are available as of this patch. So we're just zooming around. The only thing really I have left to do in Delves other than farm them for the weekly stuff is Underpin 2, which now it's like, okay, I have max level brand. I have like essentially, mythic sort of area item level. I have all my epic curios. I could try to start working on it, but I think I'm going to save that for a while. I'll get the warrior up to that absolute top end item level before I start dumping pulls into that, because I have other stuff I want to do in the game, and that's like a solo pursuit. To me, that's like more of a fun end of season thing to try to do, because like there's not going to be other stuff that demands my attention in WoW at that point, and it'll be the smoothest curve to get through the fight and get the golden mount and all that. So I'm having a great time with it. Like season 1 was okay. I want to gear up these characters. Let me go do some delves. Ugh. This season, it's like I want to do them. I'm having fun actually moment to moment inside the delve, and I'm getting rewards that feel like they're worth my time. So I think they've struck a great balance there, and it's way more. It went from, oh, this seems like a cool feature to this is kind of a sloggy chore actually, to now this season it's something I'm looking forward to doing on Weekly Reset. It's like a fun activity to go do in the game with different characters.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? So delves to me, I enjoy a lot. I feel like often I am hunting for a particular slot that I want to get a reward in at a delves, and often I just don't see it ever. And this season, as we mentioned last week, neck pieces or necklaces are very, very rare in the scene in general. There's only like 2 or 3 of them that come out of raid. There's 2 of them at a Mythic Plus, and then it's random chance out of delve or craft one. So it's very low chance that you'll get a really good neck, and so a lot of people are hunting for that, which is why you see a lot of Cinder Brews going on at the same time, because everyone's trying to get the Cinder Brew meatery neck. And I feel like delves could advance to be a little bit more like you earn a currency that you can spend to buy a particular slot, and that slot is essentially like what we had back in BFA, where you were purchasing a piece and right-clicking it, and it was randomly generating a piece that was in that slot. And so I feel like we could move that direction with it. It is neat to get something at the end. It is neat to get a random heroic reward. I feel like the champion tier rewards could be a purchasable from a vendor for a currency for that character that you earn through doing delves. And I say that because I also think it works well as a catch-up mechanic, because you can earn the champion. You'd be able to earn the champion currency doing low-level delves if you wanted to, doing 3s and 4s and that kind of thing. You don't need to do something super high. And that allows you to go back to, Reno Jackson inside of, Dornegal and go up and say, hey, I want to buy, and you essentially would buy a necklace, and it would be, whatever randomly generates from that. And it might be terrible secondary stats, and you end up having to earn more currency and try buying a different one, and till you get the secondary stats you really want in that situation. But it's a champion tier piece of loot. It's not a heroic tier piece of loot. So there still would be this push to farm and gather for the heroic tier items, and there's still that advantage to running Mythic Plus and doing raid. but it at least gets you out of last season's stuff, because that's the problem that I'm seeing for a lot of my characters. Is a lot of my characters are almost good to go for being, all in new season stuff, except their neck, because necks were a lot easier to get last season, and so they all have like a, essentially like a 639 eye level neck, and you're like, okay, and that's where champion track starts. So it would be great if I could get a champion track piece, but the only way to get one is crafting it, random chance drop from Mythic Plus, or get one out of raid. And it's really unfortunate that delves aren't a targetable set of loot. So I think the champion track loot for delves would be neat if it was a targetable piece. Same thing with trinkets. There's a lot of people who want one particular delve trinket, and there's like 7 or 8 of them. And it would be a similar thing to be like, hey, it'd be neat to be able to target a trinket so you're not getting bracers, or you're not getting, boots or legs or a chest or something out of that champion track, and being like, well, I just can't seem to roll a trinket, and then when I happen to roll a trinket, I can't seem to roll the right trinket. It would at least reduce some of that frustration for players. So I think that would be neat to see from delves on a go forward, is throwing a currency behind the champion track loot that you spend on essentially a Diablo gambler vendor that, lets you buy a slot, and it randomly generates a piece that's going to be in that slot that you get.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's like the veteran gear that you can get, but yeah, I mean,
doesn't go to 639.
What do you really want veteran gear for? Yeah. And there's going to be, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but there's going to be even better stuff coming in .5 for catch up or warbound stuff. So, I think, really one of the bigger overall problems I feel as a player is there's just too many delve trinkets. So you're just constantly ducking trinkets. I mean, there's good trinkets from it, but the pool of trinkets is so huge. Like I did my 8 delves on my druid, opened up the vault, and it was just a row of trinkets. It's like I need to have 2 or maybe 3 or even 4 good trinkets if I want to have like heavy DPS versus like heavy defensive, or like active versus passive options, or what have you. You want to have like a handful of trinkets to sub in and out for different situations, but like it's not what I'm here for. I'm not here for a row full of trinkets. So maybe, maybe in season 3 or in future expansions, they can re-itemize the whole pool a little bit, and just maybe, we just have fewer trinkets on offer, right? So yeah, you can get max, you get champ level delve trinkets from end of run, but there's like 2 to 6 of them in the pool instead of how many. I don't know how many of them are in the pool right now, but it's a lot.
Or they make the delve reward tier for completing that a currency that you can go to a vendor and spend to get a random heroic piece, because that's essentially what you're getting, right? So it could be a similar thing of, as opposed to a trinket, you could target a different slot. I just like the idea of having targetable loot, because when I look at what they're doing with Dungeon Pool for Mythic Plus and rotating through dungeons, it's really hard to choose a row of dungeons that people are going to be experiencing, which we're going to talk about later in this episode, because there's even more to that doesn't have like gaping holes in access to filling a particular slot for people, and that then becomes like the bane of their season for weeks and weeks and weeks, is trying to get this one piece of gear in this one slot. That's so frustrating. And it's not like you're targeting a specific trinket. It's not like back when we were like, hey, we have to get the cube inside Shadowlands because it's the best trinket and everyone needs a cube. It wasn't like that situation. It's one of those situations where like, I just need any neck, like any thing that goes in this space would be wonderful. And it's such a low loot pool for that you are locked into doing very specific content to try and get it. And when you do see the loot at the end of that content, there's a low chance you're going to get it. So there's not a lot of avenues you can take to try and replace that. And I think it's unfortunate that we ended up in that situation, but I think targetable loot would be a good way to fix it. The other way to fix it would be to do something with sparks, where you could use half a spark to craft heroic pieces, and it takes a full spark to do mythic, or something weird like that, where essentially you can get a bunch of heroic pieces early on crafted if that's something you were looking to do. But by investing in that, you then limit yourself on your mythic options early on in the season that you'd be able to craft into, or something along those lines where you're able to craft more pieces. So you're like, yes, actually it's worthwhile this week for me to craft a neck plus a cloak or something like that. And that then gets me 2 heroic crafted pieces and fills in the spot. There's clearly a weakness in the loot table for being able to get these pieces. You have to be really lucky to get. So, like that said, I've seen like 3 or 4 necks drop while I was on my druid, and I just haven't been able to get them because everyone's there for the neck, so no one can trade it. So you're just like, all right, well, it is what it is. We'll move on, next thing, right? You got lucky on your alt that I would happen to be in the key with me, and they can't trade it because, of course, they don't have a neck either, so no one has a neck. So this is the situation we're in. I think that's,
eventually, eventually the logjam will break up a bit with that. But.
You hope, right? But we're this far into the season now with running hundreds of keys that you're now like, okay, there's a problem with that kind of situation. Other thing you mentioned was getting the rune to unlock on your character to reduce the cost of upgrading stuff on all of your other characters with rune crests. I did that specifically with my druid and my evoker. So my evoker this week got the rune achievement, which meant I then went onto my druid and started spending all my rune crests. So I was able to very easily get my druid almost to ruined. Guess which piece I'm missing to get my way all the way to ruined on my druid?
No, I can't imagine.
Yeah. So that's, one of those situations where I'll need 20 or 40 rune crests or whatever it is to be able to finish off my next slot on my druid, but everything else is all set and ready to go. So that's good to see. The other thing this week that folks may not have been aware of, but at this point you can now max out mining and alchemy for professions. Those 2, which I've stayed up on top of, are now able to be capped out as far as knowledge points go if you've been keeping up with that path. And obviously with mining, you can just grind it out if that's something you want to do and have that fully maxed out. So that was fun. I'm glad I managed to get that all done and fixed up as well. All right, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Warlords of Draenor Time Walking event, which means the Sign of the Iron buff is up, increasing the reputation gains from Warlords of Draenor combat and quests by 50%, as well as there's obviously Time Walking versions of Auchindoun, Bloodmaw Slagmines, Everbloom, Grimrail Depot, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, and Sky Reach, where the dungeons are dropping 606 eye level gear. It's been bumped, keep that in mind, and the vendor's selling 593s. And there's a quest to complete 5 of these dungeons to get yourself a cache of normal Liberation of Undermine gear, which might be one of those sought-after trinkets or a neck, who knows, from completing those 5. So that's certainly something that's on my agenda to do. And man, outside of that, we got ourselves the Call of the World Soul going on for Titan Disc Fragments this week. This means that this week you'll be going into the outside of Dornogal Inn and picking up Titan Disc Fragments. So if you have not yet, if you're listening to this on Monday and you have time to finish your Titan Disc Fragments quest that you hadn't finished for the last 2.5 weeks that it's been out, be sure you finish it because you'll get a fresh one. It's not critical that you do so. Obviously, if you've already earned your keys from other things for doing your Bountiful Delves, if you've already earned your last fragment for your spark from doing something else, then you're not behind in any way. But this is a nice thing to stay on top of if you're looking forward to it. It's an easy thing to do. And then we have ourselves, obviously, the rest of the world events that you'll want to be participating in throughout the week, which help you earn those exact things I just talked about, as far as the keys and the fragments go, which is your special assignment world quests, those world quests that require you to complete 3 other world quests to do, the Theater Troop, the Awakening the Machine, Spreading the Light, Severed Threads Pact, and World Soul Memories. I still do Theater Troop every now and then when I happen to be in Dornogal and look at the clock and go, ooh, Theater Troop's up. I'll go over and knock that out real quick. It's super easy now for a character that is Season 2 geared. It is very easy to do and takes very little time, and it's certainly worthwhile doing for a chance at some loot, as well as just getting those bountiful keys and stuff out of the way that you want to be getting. So be sure you're checking that out.
Yeah, my kind of preferred loop for getting my 4 keys from activities is like, okay, I'm going to pick up whatever the weekly thing is, obviously. I'm going to do Theater Troop at the top of the hour, and then I'm going to go to Undermine, and I'm going to do surge pricing on the half hour. There's probably a special assignment in Undermine, so then I'll do some world quests while I'm there, and then I'll do that. I'll get the third one from that, and then like this week, for example, a great way to get your Titan Disc Fragments is to just do delves. So you do 3 delves and you should have the weekly done.
Yep.
Another good option is Spreading the Light and Hallowfall, because you don't have to actually do anything other than contribute to the lesser key flames. You get your box, there's a key in there. Awakening the Machine has been sped up and is a lot faster than it used to be, but
a lot faster.
It's still probably less fast than like Spreading the Light, but then again, like you can do it whenever you want to, unlike Theater Troop and Surge Pricing. So you have a couple options with that.
It's also faster than doing the world quests. For doing essentially doing 4 world quests, the Waking the Machine is definitely faster than that as well, depending on what you're wanting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think in like Undermine, I'm still kind of in the spot where it's like, all right, I'm clearing that out on the regular because there's stuff I want from the zone. So that it's nice that there's usually a special assignment tucked in there because it's like, okay, kind of just double dipping on stuff. I think that's the biggest thing that I try to think about. It's like, all right, I don't really like the mechanic of the keys, but you got to do what you got to do. And especially in the alts, I want the champ track end of run gear. So got to make sure that you're stocked up. It also means, pay attention to your Radiant Echoes and all that. I would highly recommend doing World Soul Memories in Undermine to just get those other couple keys for the week. Because the Undermine ones are like, they're very dense compared to the ones in other zones in terms of like the memory mobs that you have to kill. So I always try to do the ones in Undermine while I'm there, just soak out those Radiant Echoes. I do the 5X and I usually get, in the one that's in like the junkyard, I can get close to like 200 shards just by myself, just from that. So that's been pretty nice. I really don't love the process of thinking about the keys, but you got to do it. It's just the way the mode works.
Yeah, and I want to highlight that 200. If you get 200 fragments, you've gotten the majority of the reward that comes out of doing the World Soul stuff. If you get over 400, obviously you're getting more reward, but it's not substantially more reward than you're getting at 200. So like if you're doing 200 in a solo experience, you're doing well. Don't stress that too much.
Yeah, the World Soul Memories I just like was not doing in season 1.
I wasn't at all.
And it felt like you had to do it in a raid group, and it was such a pain to create one. And the spots that they picked for them, I didn't have like a preferred spot I like to farm. There's 2 of them in Undermine, I think, and it just bounces back and forth each week, and both of them are pretty mob dense and you can do pretty well there. So I just haven't been sweating it. They put up that post kind of explaining the math on it when season 2 started, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to burn these up. Like if I'm sitting on 5, 10, 15 Radiant Echoes, like this is what they're for. So let me use them. Once we get farther into the season and all my characters are in full champ gear, then I won't care anymore. I'm just doing it for Vault. So maybe only do 4 a week or whatever. If I do more, I'm not going to care as much about that end of run champ. But like right now, it's like, dude, got to make sure get my coffer keys on all my tunes.
Right.
Do world quests that grant the fragments. Do World Soul Memories. All that stuff is in the rotation now, where it had fallen off pretty fast in season 1.
I thought it was funny in season 1 for me. The main motivator for me to go and run those World Soul Memories was for the Valor Stones, more so than the key fragments. That's now changed in season 2. In season 2, I run them more often to get key fragments, so I can run more delves, more bountiful delves, than I do to try and get the Valor Stones, which I feel like it's now become much more of a non-issue when it comes to using them and needing them. It was a much larger issue last season than it has been this one. They've certainly increased the acquisition rate, which has been great. Especially
when you're doing as many keys as especially you've been doing early in the season. Like they increase the Valor Stone yield from keys, and then like you get the bonus ones if somebody gets rating, and you're probably getting a lot of rating. So when you're really when you're doing that many keys, like the Valor Stones just stack up. But
for sure,
it's kind of hard to. You got to play pretty meticulously to get 8 keys every single week for delves without spending undercoin, because like as you move up the Delver's journey, you can buy them from Finley, and then you get the discounts. They're only like 1k a piece, which is that's not bad, but I'd rather stack up my undercoin for other stuff if I can get the keys just from doing stuff in the game.
So including that guaranteed map is a really nice thing. It's very expensive at 2k undercoin to be able to get, but it is one of those things that if you if I start off a week and I don't have one of those, and I run one bountiful and I don't get one or get a map, or obviously run into the underpin himself, then I'm obviously in a situation where I want to buy one of those and actually make sure that in my first few delves that I run, I'm getting that heroic piece out of the way, So I at least have that taken care of. So yeah, certainly something to consider. All right, the PvP Brawl this week is Packed House. That means it's a arena that you are putting 15 against 15 players in. This is essentially an arena that's built for, 2 to 3 players to fight against each other. But now there's 15 on 15. So it is a very quick, very fast brawl that's very hectic and crazy. And it's a great way to earn yourself some marks of honor, conquest, and honor from getting a win from one of these, or just grind some honor itself from just running these things back to back to back. It is very silly and very fun. So if you want some silliness in PvP, it's a great way to get it.
Yeah, and it's extremely silly. Yes, the silliness is the point here for sure. Yeah, these modes are not designed for 30 players. So, well, if you like to do brawls, hop in there and do this week. Just don't put any pressure on yourself to you have to do well or win the game for your team or something. Stuff is just going to happen and you just ride it out. It's just wacky to look at. It's fun to watch the whole kind of arena just explode once it counts down.
Yeah. All right. Well, it might seem really fast, but we've actually come full circle around to a Pulsar week again, and we're getting into this week. So crystals will spawn and move towards an enemy while in combat. That is not what it does. Pulsar is different now. Obviously, Pulsar is where you get the orbs that spawn around your character and will rotate around your character, and friends have to run into the orbs, which is the thing that replaced it. So did we get this correct, Jason? Because I feel like Pulsar was 3 weeks ago, and I feel like we are another week away.
Okay, there's a disclaimer here because we are in a new season, so it may be different, right? But the way that it worked in season 1 was, so we had the 4 Xalatath affixes, right? You had A, B, C, D, and then we had Fort Tyrannical. So you'd get A, Fort, B, Tyrannical, C, Fort, D, Tyrannical.
Yep.
My expectation is that then season 2 will follow season 1's pattern, where you then get B, Fort, A, Tyrannical, C, Fort, D, Tyrannical. So it mixes up the Fort Tyrannical pairing with the Xalatath affix. That's the way that they did it in season 1. Now, because stuff is different in season 2 with where Fort and Tyrannical kick in and some of the overall sort of balance and overall design of Mythic Plus, it may be different. But my expectation for this week coming up, for this week's reset, would be Pulsar Tyrannical. So we'll see.
Yeah,
we don't know for sure because we haven't been all the way through the rotation, and something could be different. But because it's not like they communicate about the stuff in advance, so all we can do is go, okay, this is what happened before.
Yeah.
So this is what probably happens next. So if we're wrong on this, we'll figure it out, and we'll get the rotation locked in. But we probably need to go 8 weeks deep through everything before we have a good idea of what the full rotation looks like.
Yeah, no worries. So Pulsar, you have crystals that spawn around players that need to be soaked by other players, and essentially it's something that's going to give you a buff to your mastery or your leech. Well, mastery and leech, and obviously there's 5 of you, so it stacks up to 5 times. You get 20% mastery, 10% leech, and if you do not soak these at all, then it does increasing damage and reduced damage taken from enemies for each one that's not soaked. So you want to be sure that when these things spawn in and start spiraling around your character, you are running into your friends is running into yours, or you're waiting until yours lines up in a direction you can run and then just ramming it into a friend, which I was doing too last time this was up and about, was just making sure I could actually get this completed the way you needed to. So yeah, if it's Pulsar week, then definitely be sure you're taking advantage of the new affix and getting yourself that extra mastery that's in there. It's also an early Tyrannical week, so at 7s you'll see Tyrannical, and then 10s we'll see Fortified kick in there with Tyrannical. Fortified, by the way, we found out partway through the week that all of Season 2 so far has been functioning improperly. For those who are unaware, Fortified was operating at a 30% increase to the damage done by trash, as opposed to a 20% increase to the damage done by trash. Someone did the math. My assumption is they died to an ability on a 9 or a 10, and then did the follow-up key and died to a similar ability, and was like, that was substantially more damage. What happened there? I pressed buttons I was supposed to press, and then they did the math and figured out, oh, what do you know? Fortified is doing more than it should as far as increasing damage on mobs. So that's supposed to be getting fixed or have gotten fixed. So that's something that I know Blizzard has on their agenda. So hopefully Fortified will be feeling better shortly for people, and you won't be taking that additional 10% damage from a lot of abilities.
Yeah, it should be. There were definitely some spots where you went, whoa, why did that hit that hard? Even though overall I think it's been feeling pretty good. There's been some stuff that just spikes beyond comprehension. It's just like, I don't know why I died, but I'll try to do better next time. Overall, I think this week is pretty good. Like Pulsar is a pretty reasonable affix. Certainly a lot easier to deal with than Oblivion, which it replaced. And in a lot of situations, you're going to be close to your party members inside a lot of these dungeons, so you can quickly soak them. I mean, you know, you have a lot of time. 15 seconds is a long time to clear them. So, you know, just be smart. Deprioritize them if you have to. Like if you get like 4 of them and there's one of them out there, and let's say you're doing Workshop and you're on King Mechagon and it's the vacuum thing, you know, like the magnet, like maybe just let one go, you know, versus trying to reposition yourself into a very dangerous spot just to try to clear it. Like you do have to kind of make those decisions sometimes. Last Boss Rookery is another example where like your party's probably going to be really spread out. So do your best to grab them. But if one of them's got to go, like you just have to do the fight right. And if the boss gets a buff, it gets a buff. So
yeah, if you had Pulsar spawn while you're trying to soak the crystals on the last boss of Rookery, that is a bad luck scenario.
Yeah. It doesn't really feel fair, but like you just have to make it work, right? Like don't end up dying because you're trying to do the affix perfectly and then you're ignoring the more important mechanics of the fight or anything. That's my advice. It seems to have worked for you know, the people that I've been running with. So overall, like pretty good affix. Low tyrannical could be a problem if you're working your way up through the system, because you might just brick wall into a boss that you can't kill, but you have to learn the bosses. You know, I think tyrannical is good for learning the bosses because they live long enough that you're really going to see what you need to learn. So overall, I think it's a pretty good week. I think Pulsar low fort is probably better, but yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. We dealt with Devour this week, which we didn't really talk about at all. But
I'm happy. I was about to talk about Devour. I'm happy moving into any week that is not Devour week that throws a massive onus on an individual player because no one else knows how to press their dispel buttons. FYI, everyone out there, any class that has a dispel can remove Devour. It doesn't matter if you're a warlock or a mage or a druid or a shaman or a invoker, or all of these classes have dispel buttons. Paladins, priests, they all have dispel buttons. You can remove Devour by just dispelling yourself or a friendly in any of those situations. To expect it just to be entirely onus on the healer is just silly. Like, use one global and like spare the stress that exists for people inside the scenario.
If you just decide that it's going to be up to the healer to, you know, throughput the group's way through, then you're potentially setting yourself up for failure, you know. I'm in voice, obviously, with my crew. We're going to go do some dungeons. I'm like, it's Devour week. Should I grab Bitter Immunity, which is a warrior talent that I can use on a 3-minute cooldown? So like every other one, I can just cleanse myself. It's positioned a little awkwardly. It's not a talent you really want to take as a warrior typically, but, you know, have the conversation. My healer said, don't worry about it. Don't bother.
Yeah.
I got this, whatever. So that's what I did, you know. But if he said, yeah, please grab that and please use it on cooldown, then I would do that. But, you know, even at that, like, okay, I'm holding Impending Victory. My melee attack that self heals, I'm holding that for when, you know, the debuff is about to go out, just so I can contribute a whole bunch of healing to myself and help out. So I will say it felt a lot different than the first time we had Devour in Season 1. It just seems like everybody's power level is higher, everybody's comfort level is higher in general, so like we were kind of just blasting it off for the most part, you know. But it depends. Like, you have to I think that's part of where this is part of the reason why I don't pug hardly ever if I can avoid it. I just want to play with people that I know and we have a rapport and we communicate. But like, that's part of it, you know. Like, you put your dungeon party together, okay, like, what dungeons are we doing? What do we need to be concerned with? What's the affix this week? How, from a metagame standpoint, like, how do we want to approach it? And, you know, certainly like the game presents you with a lot of different options to solve these problems in the modern kind of way with talent trees and stuff. So just all about having that communication with your team and figuring out what the plan is going to be when the affixes roll in.
Yeah, and if you don't have a plan because you're pugging, which I do a lot of at this stage of the game, I do a lot of pugging. You have to plan as a healer to how you're going to have that throughput. And so when I was healing keys on my druid this week, and I had to literally be like, okay, I need to take Convoke, I need to take Flourish, and every time that starts queuing up that this is going to happen, as far as the debuffs are going to go out, I need to, essentially Nature's Sweat. I have to lead into a empowered wild growth, and then Convoke, and then Flourish, and that'll clear everyone inside the group with maybe like one Dispel or a spot heal here and there to actually clear it off of the group. And that was something I consistently had to do because you just find no help inside any of those situations. And it's like, okay, this is something where I'm literally in a group with all classes that have dispels that can all just right click themselves or, press their dispel button whenever this thing comes up. That goes on a 9-second cooldown. It's not like it's a big, you can literally dispel twice as most of these classes. So it's like, okay, please guys, just, I would love to spec differently and spec into more damage and be able to spec, to essentially help with the key a lot more and do different things. But if your DPS aren't going to press one button that creates a one global cooldown, right? I can't help you in that situation. You have to plan for it as a healer, which is really unfortunate. So I do feel like as much as there's other options for Devour, I think it does create an unjust sort of weight on healing classes in a lot of keys at the moment. And I would almost want to see it adjusted slightly to be something that's not something that you can heal off, and something that has a different way of clearing it, whether that's jumping multiple times or a dispel or something that's not a healing quota. Because I think the healing quota it leans too hard into here's an unjust thing for healers. And, there are some classes that can power through it really easily, and some classes that actually have mastery and whatnot that empower them to remove it very quick. And it's really easy for them and they'd never complain about it. There's other classes that's a total pain in the butt for. And there's some classes that have a mass dispel or, a revival or whatever it is that essentially removes it all. Or a DPS that can do that same, mass dispel that can remove it all. So there's a lot of value in that. I just feel like the healing requirement quota is still something that unjustly makes everyone just assume this is a healer thing. Healers are the ones who have to deal with it, as opposed to going, this is a group
word
thing.
Healing.
Exactly. So that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're in a like a full pug situation or like a low communication group, regardless of what role you're playing, then it's really important that you bring whatever tools you can to assist, at least with your own debuff, right?
Yeah.
Like if you just clear yourself, then you should be doing that, every time or as many times as you can within the interval that it pops up. So that's just like being a good citizen, a good team player. So yeah, you should definitely do that. It is weird because all the other affixes are sort of, they don't have that sort of onus on one particular role. Like if you don't do this, then people are going to be mad at you in a full pug, right? If you don't heal it off, and it's like, well, there are actually other things you can do. Yeah. And also there are self-healing spells and stuff even for non-healer classes. So there's options, and that's the way the game is kind of designed. So if you're in a low communication group, the best thing to do is just try to be as self-sufficient as possible. Yeah,
I just know when I was boom kitting this week, I was dispelling twice regularly within those same intervals because I could fit 2 in as long as I was very fast. So the moment it started queuing up for, hey, here comes the debuff, I would just immediately save a global to dispel myself when that happened. And then, the next time it was off cooldown, I'd hit whoever was left over who hadn't, been cleared yet. And that meant that between just the healer and I with the spells, we could clear 2 of them. And that's just 2 people of the group taking the onus on using dispels to do that. But really, you want to leave the healer's dispels open because there's so many other abilities that need to be dispelled by the healer that it's like, guys, if 2 or 3 DPS can just cover this, that's great. How about we just do that every single time? if you have 3 DPS who can dispel themselves, then they all just dispel themselves immediately. The tank's going to get taken care of just through passive healing because they're probably doing enough healing themselves plus receiving enough healing to clear it. So then just one of those DPS has to use their dispel a second time to hit the healer, and you're good. Like, that is ideal kind of situation for a group, and it's not hard to achieve that. It's just because there's healing quota as part of the language in this, it's like, oh yeah, well that's, that's the healer's problem. They'll just have to heal through it every time. And then you have healers like myself who are like, well, I'll just use major cooldowns every single time this thing is up to make sure I get rid of it in time. And you're like, that's not how this should work. It creates other issues through a dungeon where those major cooldowns are now not available when you might need them later. And it's also a situation that creates a mana issue eventually throughout the dungeon because you have to then heal less efficiently in those situations where you would have been using those major cooldowns. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword for that. Okay, micro holiday this week. March of the Tadpoles, which I will probably miss, is a one-day only event on Saturday, April 5th, where your babyfin winterfin murlocs of Borean Tundra will complete their trip across the West Rift. So if you're someone who wants to go out there and adopt a little Murloc friend who's going to send you a beautiful rock painting later on, then you can do so by completing the quest chain for this. It is a one-time only completion quest chain, so bear that in mind. But it's a very cool one. If you want to see a lot of baby Murlocs running across Borean Tundra, you'll be able to on Saturday, April 5th.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's such a great micro holiday. It's so fun. It is unfortunate that it's like a one and done ever on the character. I mean, you can go talk to your adopted Murloc child again every year, but you don't get to go through the little quest chain repeatedly. So, but it's fun to see all little baby Murlocs running around and everything, and King Murgle is out there and everything like that. So it's a good time. Yeah, it is only one day, so it's this coming Saturday. Don't forget, get out to Borean Tundra and go say hi to the baby Murlocs, and they'll give you a little piece of vendor trash that you can treasure forever. It's really, it's very much like being a parent in that regard. So, yeah, I love it. The question is, am I going to remember to do this? Yeah. Saturday is weird, right? Like Saturday is not usually the day I spend a lot of time in WoW generally. So
you spend it with your own kids,
right? Yeah, I have. Yeah, if my actual children are handing me vendor trash all day long. So that's how that works. Well, there's no vendor, unfortunately. There's no gold coins involved. But Saturday is not usually much of a WoW day for me. So I got to remember, like, all right, log in and go. I got to go hang out with them just for at least for a minute. So it's fun. If you don't do it, like, whatever. I don't know. It's not going to really affect anything. You don't get any kind of permanent cool reward on your character or account for this. It doesn't do anything for you in that regard. It's just a fun thing to go do because it's happening in the world.
Yeah. Darkmoon Fair is also kicking off this week on Sunday, the 6th of April, and that's going to run until the 12th. So I will have like a one day, I will return home on the day that this is ending. So I either need to find a way to log into WoW from Vegas to be able to be sure I get my knowledge points and everything from Darkmoon Fair, or I need to essentially get home on Saturday and then before I go to sleep, go and do Darkmoon Fair and then go to sleep. So that is something you don't want to miss out on for your knowledge points. It's also great for folks who are trying to get their dirigible and get their tickets for that. It's great for healers for Mythic Plus if they want to get their Darkmoon Salmon or whatever that fish is called that restores your mana substantially faster than most fish do or most food does. So be sure you're getting that. It's got the experience and reputation gains for folks who are wanting to take advantage of those, which means that whole week when you're doing your weeklies, your quests and whatnot, you're like, that's, starting Tuesday this week. If you want to hold off on your weekly quests until Sunday, you can do that and have those weekly quests all get turned in on Sunday with a 10% bonus rep. And you'll get that bonus rep towards your weeklies inside of the Undermine. That's something you're wanting to do. And then obviously that runs the following week as well. So you can then take advantage on that Tuesday to be able to be sure you're getting that extra rep and experience gain as well, if that's something you're doing on your characters. So be sure you're doing that. There's also achievements. Don't forget about achievements. This comes around but once a month. So if you're someone who is trying to get like all of the racing achievements, or you're trying to get the fancy dance achievements with the dance competition that's there, or you're doing like Minesweeper or whatever it is, there's lots of stuff to do at Darkmoon Fair, and it's a lot of fun. So be sure you're taking advantage of that. For me, it's just like heavy knowledge points, going through all these characters that have not capped out professions yet, and massive knowledge point gathering to make sure that I have all of that, grabbed that I can grab for all those characters. And I was very happy to see them slowly starting to cross things off the list. Getting alchemy done was really nice for me profession-wise. Mining done is really nice profession-wise. Skinning done is nice profession-wise. It's lowering that weekly work of flying around and gathering treasures and that kind of thing. So I'll be happy once, I cross a few more of these off the list. Enchanting will be really nice to cross off the list once it's totally done, because it's one that you need greens to be able to get your greens and blues to be able to get your points for the week. So I've been disenchanting a lot of things, and I've noticed that the market for greens and blues has slowly climbed in price, which makes me assume more and more people are doing this on a regular basis. So I'll have to see if, once I wrap that up, that'll be a nice big economy savings as well, as far as that goes. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to have this many crafters going at the same time, because you recognize like your ingenuity is just gold. Like it's just worth gold. So if you're not on a regular basis being like, hey, yeah, I will craft this enchant and I will use ingenuity to make it, essentially a tier 3, and that gets me 1,000 gold because I used ingenuity to make it a tier 3, you're doing it wrong profession-wise. You want to be flooding the market with that kind of stuff on a regular basis and keeping your ingenuity away from being 1,000 of 1,000. So definitely factor that into your plans. All right. Anything else for Darkmoon Fair, Jason?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's one of those deals that you should probably pay attention to if you care about professions, even if you don't care about anything else at the DMF, right? Like, if nothing else, go get that. And there's stuff to do there that's fun. I think the rep thing is like, I don't know, man. Like, I haven't really been min-maxing my Undermine rep, but I'm almost done. Like, I kind of I do the world quests, I do the weeklies, and I didn't min-max it with like the buff that came out for like the first Darkmoon Fair that we had, like, and I'm almost done with it. So it's not like I feel that like I need to hold a bunch of stuff so I can get that extra 10%, which is nice. It's a good feeling to have. Like, it's cool to have the bonus, but I don't feel like I really need to min-max this. I mean, I guess I would say it does overlap with the time walking week, right? So that's a good chance to level up fast, because that extra 10% XP is kind of nice. And then you can get into time walkings and just crush them fast and just level up quick. So
very true.
That might be a good thing to keep in mind for this time. And yeah, I mean, I'm done with mining. I'm not close to being done with blacksmithing, but because blacksmithing just has so many points. But I am almost done with the long blade sub-spec for weapons, which means once I get that done, then I can repair swords, and then I'll be able to repair all of my gear with my master's hammer without incurring any kind of repair fees, which is fantastic. It'll save me so much gold for the rest of the expansion. So with Darkmoon Fair and with weekly reset, I should be able to max out long blades, and then it's like, okay, I probably don't care about much. I think I'm going to be using swords mostly this season based on the loot pool. So yeah, it's like at that point, I'm just kind of putting points into stuff in blacksmithing just to max it out. But all the practical stuff will be done. I'll be able to, I can make like any piece that I want of armor at 5-star without too much trouble. I'll be able to repair all my gear. So it'll be a nice week for that. And then, the question is going to become, and this came up actually in the TSZ Discord a bit, like, now that we're at the point where you can just bank knowledge, is there a knowledge sink, and is there going to be a knowledge sink? There was one added in mid-Dragonflight. It wasn't great, but it existed. You could go talk to an NPC and essentially like trade them your extra knowledge for some artisan's metal,
right?
Which is artisan's acuity in this expansion and works a little bit differently. There are artisan's acuity sinks already in the game on the vendor, but I don't know. I think there's some avenues they could go for excess knowledge. I don't think that we'll probably see it until maybe 1.7 or later, because most people aren't going to really be even acquiring excess knowledge until then. But I hope they do add something, because it's like, it does sort of give you that motivation to go, okay, like, I'm going to go get my weekly mining knowledge drops, because then I know I'm getting like a decent amount of mining income, right? I'm mining a bunch of stuff this week, so that's good for my overall sort of profession economy. And then I'm getting these knowledge points that I don't need to use to spec up my character, but I can get some other kind of mats or some other kind of benefit from acquiring these and turning them into an NPC. I think that would be a good thing. You know, it was not like overwhelmingly incredible in Dragonflight, but it was nice to have. So hopefully that maybe it's in and I don't know about it, but nobody that was part of the discussion was saying, oh no, actually you can go turn in your excess knowledge to this guy. So we'll see. I think they should add that because it just gives you a nice benefit for continuing to participate in the game, basically.
Yeah. I don't think there's a problem with that at all. So hopefully that helps out as well. Okay. Notable hotfixes for this week. We have Evokers getting themselves a fix on their Devastation 2 set, a nerf on the Devastation 2 set. I say nerf even though it's a fix because they say they fixed an issue causing Shattering Stars from the Undermine class 2 set bonus to be able to target enemies far away from the Evoker. Yeah, you wouldn't want a ranged class able to hit things far away, would you? It's just, it's a terrible idea to... It's very weird to have...
It depends on how far, but yeah.
It's very weird to have the class icons go down for a raid and go, okay, range are going to stand here, melee are going to stand here, and then you watch your Evokers in the group like slowly inch farther and farther forward, closer and closer to the boss, until they're in a position they can cast, and that's more than 10 yards ahead of the ones behind them, because it's such a limited range. They're that middle range class, and it feels very strange to, especially for me, to go from playing a Boomkin, which has the farthest range to Hunter spells to a certain degree can have some farther range, but yeah, like basically the farthest range in the game, to Evoker, which is the weakest range class in the game when it comes to being at range. So I will say it has improved my gameplay I just naturally stand closer to the boss now on any class that I'm playing, which I think in general is an advantage in a lot of situations, for especially even just for healers to be able to do that. So that has helped, but it's a very weird feeling to watch. It happened twice this week where I had my Evoker inside a raid situation where they're like, okay, here's range, here's melee, and then like you just like are like, all right, I'm just gonna stand 15 yards farther forward than where the ranged marker is out here on my own, because this is where I need to stand to be able to do my precasting on the boss. Like that's weird. It's weird they did that they made Evoker a mid-range class, but it is what it is. Maybe at some point they'll change it or decide against it because it's just such a weird thing for them. So outside of that, we had some other class fixes to Hunters and Monks and Priests. I'm not going to mention them all here because they're pretty minor things when it comes to just chance to procs being fixed on some things, and basically, Holy Word Chastise now breaks on a small amount of damage threshold as opposed to any damage. So, some little fixes like that to make sure that things are working the way they're supposed to work. Delves, they fixed an issue where the Wave Scrambler 2000 consumable could unintentionally go on a 24-hour cooldown instead of its intended 1-hour cooldown. I had this happen. I used one and it went on a 24-hour cooldown, and I just assumed that was how it was supposed to work, because at that point I used it on like a Wednesday, and it meant that I wasn't going to be able to use another map on that character until the following Tuesday anyways. So I didn't really worry about it. But I suppose, yeah, if you're using the Wave Scrambler on a Monday and you want to be able to use the next one on a Tuesday, there's a problem with the 24-hour cooldown, because might potentially have to wait till later in the day to be able to do it based on when you used it. You might not be able to use it, Tuesday morning after reset if you used it Monday night. So that could be what they're specifically trying to fix with that one.
Yeah, this is weird. A buddy of mine was like, hey, I bought the thing and it has a 19-hour cooldown. Like, is that right? I'm like, I don't know. I was trying to assess if he like had done something wrong or weird.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've never even seen a cooldown on it. Like, I just kind of use it and when I need to use it, and then I don't think about it. So yeah, I don't know. That was weird behavior. I'm glad that they fixed it. I initially was like, okay, I'm buying a Wave Scrambler right away every week on each tune. And now it's like, I'm in this zone where I'm just doing 8 and I just keep getting maps anyway. So it's like,
yeah,
if I don't have one by number 7, then I would buy one. But I think I'm at the point where like, I'm not in a real rush to get that. So it was different at the beginning on the Warrior, where it's like, I can squeeze in a delve before raids. So let me buy a Wave Scrambler. I'll get a hero piece. I might get a nice upgrade, and then I'll use that all night. But that's kind of fallen off. So now it's like, okay, let me bank undercoin for the cosmetics, for the extra keys, whatever. But it's still a good option, especially if you just want to get in and get out. The thing is, they're expensive. So if you're not doing a lot of delves, you won't be able to afford them. It's kind of a weird. Undercoin, I don't think ended up going back war bound, right? So like it's character locked. So it's not like you can like, okay, I'm doing 8 delves on my alt. I'm only going to do 1 on the main, so I can funnel the under. It doesn't work that way anymore. You can't funnel the undercoin. So it's kind of a weird thing overall. But sometimes you just get them too. They just drop from the Nemesis strong boxes and stuff, which is awesome. That's incredible. So, just something to keep in mind. I guess it's all part of the sort of the decision making process you have to make in your approach to managing your warband and delves.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It is a decision to make to spend that 2,000 currency, because it is a currency that's used for other things that I definitely want to use it for. So it's kind of a pain, including catch-up gear. So it's kind of a pain to like have to spend 2,000 of it on one of these devices to get a map, because I ran 5 delves and still haven't gotten a map, and I just want to freaking map so I can get that done. That to me is, I wish it was cheaper. I wish it was 750. That's what I wish it was. So that way, by the time you run 3 or 4 delves, you have enough currency to actually buy the thing, as opposed to being like, no, you need to run 10 delves to have the currency to be able to. You're like, that's
right.
A lot of delves.
There's like an upper limit where it's like, okay, like once you stop filling out the vault, it's like I'm done for the week.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the problem that we have going on there. All right. As far as raid goes and dungeons go, Darkflame Clef, they resolved an issue where Old Waxbeard's reckless charge could hit players after his charge had completed. In other words, you could like walk into him while he was stunned after completing the charge, and you just get hit by the charge. They also addressed an issue where Old Waxbeard can charge out of the encounter area and despawn. This happened multiple times in some groups. The most frustrating thing that was really weird was I was doing a Dark Flame Cleft, and we hadn't actually pulled the boss yet. And when we arrived at where the boss was supposed to be, there was just 5 little dudes hanging out with no boss, the 5 that are normally there. And so we actually had to defeat them, and then we got the boss will respawn in 30 seconds timer, and then we had to wait the 30 seconds, and then the boss spawned for the first time after those 30 seconds, and then we could fight the boss. And we're all just sort of standing there being like, what happened? Like, what was that bug? That was a weird one. So, yeah, I don't know.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
There's some strange things with that encounter already. I will say I've grown to love Dark Flame Cleft. It is one of the fastest keys you can do, I think, out there at the moment for just plowing through it. Because you can do that first hallway in like 3 pulls or 4 pulls pretty consistently and do the first boss. And then it's just 2 to 3 trash pulls before the second boss. And then if you actually, and we start having our tank do this, when you get to the minecart and actually have to do the minecart phase, our tank will essentially take off and just gather a huge amount of mobs and bring them back to the cart. And the whole time that they're doing that, the cart's moving. So you can essentially have the cart stop like twice in that entire journey and be all the way through that within that window of time, which was really nice as well. So there's ways to really make that place go fast. And I think that's become a lot more attractive to me as a dungeon to run, which has been nice. It's also one where there's a lot more player responsibility, obviously. But yeah, it's
true. Yeah, it also has like one of the most forgiving timers, I think.
Yeah.
Even though they like reduced the timer recently, it still feels quite forgiving. Yeah, I agree. I think it's maybe it might actually be the easiest dungeon in the pool, with the caveat that everybody has to know how to do it.
Yes.
Like if everybody knows the bosses, then I think it's pretty easy. The problem is that the bosses are a little weird, so you may run into situations where people don't know the bosses. Then it becomes very difficult. So as long as you can clear that hurdle with like, do we know how to do the bosses? I think it's a great run. I think I mentioned at the top, it's my first plus 12, and we didn't even do it like mega clean. I think we had a wipe in there somewhere on something, or some kind of reset, or something took longer than it should have, and we were still comfortably under the timer on plus 12. So Dark Flame's a good one. It was a little intimidating at first, and I think when we saw it like preseason, we were like, oh, when this becomes a keystone, man, this one's going to be a wild ride. But it needed some smoothing out, but overall, I think it's one of the better ones for sure.
Yeah. As far as Motherlode goes, they addressed an issue where crawler mines did not reacquire their target after they'd exit and re-enter combat. I'm assuming that's something to do with people stealthing or shadow melding them off, and them just not reacquiring a target at all and just sort of going to sleep. So they should now grab someone. They should now grab someone new as a target when you shadow meld. So keep that in mind. It could
possibly be, I'm not entirely sure about this either, but another case might be like if you're mounted and you run by one, you might outrange it before it finishes like the cast that it does where it acquires the target or something. Like had issues with that in that like last hallway up to the last boss where, there's some weird retargeting behavior that happens. So hopefully that's feeling a bit better. It's such an annoying part of that dungeon where you're like, the timer in there is not as generous. So you're getting there and you're like, oh man, we can do this, but we got to get through the crawler mines clean. And then they just start like doing weird targeting behavior, or they blow up when people aren't expecting it. And then you start losing time. So
Yeah.
hopefully they're behaving a little more consistently now. I've been in there. I don't think I did one this week, so I haven't been in there lately.
Yeah. They also addressed an issue where the Alliance entrance to the dungeon could be invisible for some players. I did not experience this. I have Alliance characters. I did not experience an invisible entrance. So that also got resolved.
Same, yeah. I didn't run into that.
Yeah. Operation Floodgate, the Darkfuse Demolitionist RPGG damage was reduced by 20%, as well as Giesel's Gigazap's Thunder Punch initial damage reduced by 40%. Swamp Face Choking Vines can now be anticipated. The Ultimate Penitence no longer causes players to fly towards Swamp Face during the encounter, and they addressed an issue where Darkfuse Demolitionist will cast RPGG continuously while under the effects of Dominate Mind. Now, there's a few things about Floodgate to me. I mean, obviously damage reduction and fixing like, hey, people just can essentially mind control on our Darkfuse Demolitionist and spam their ability on things. Makes sense to me to resolve those. I think the initial damage of Thunder Punch is great because it certainly helps tanks out a lot with that ability. And then I didn't actually notice the Razor Choke Vines being more easy to anticipate. I just didn't notice it at all. I think that they maybe what they mean is like the green arrow will appear above someone's head before the vines appear. In that encounter, we're stacked so tightly and shifting left all of the time that I just don't notice this that much. And now as a healer, which I did inside Floodgate, if you stand away from the group, because you're not going to get targeted by vines at all, right? You're the guaranteed no viner. It means that essentially you can bait the frontal from the boss away from the group, which is really nice. So just don't stay with the group as they travel around. Stay out on your own in one area. And every now and then, if you happen to be the one targeted by his big frontal, only you have to move and the whole other group doesn't have to worry about adjusting their position based off it, which is really nice. So that's certainly something you can do there as well that'll help out. I will say that Floodgate has become, like, it's slowly climbing my list or getting close to being an okay dungeon to run. I will say I now like Floodgate more than Workshop. That's just me. As far as pacing goes and being able to sort of push through that place, I feel like Workshop has a lot more, like the conveyor belt climbing, the maze you have to sort of stealth your way through. There's a lot more like vehicle where you have to get in a vehicle and it carries you somewhere. The pacing of Workshop just isn't as nice to me as Floodgate is, where you can just go and go and go and go, which feels good. And as I'm learning more tricks about encounters and where to stand and whatnot, that's helping a lot too. I will. The big tip of the day for Floodgate is if you're a ranged class or a healer and you are doing some of these platforms where you still have to destroy the goods, you can climb on top of the goods boxes, and any ground effect that's there will not hurt you when you're on top of the goods boxes, which means when you're fighting shredders who put down giant spinning blades of death underneath of your feet, you can actually climb up on top of those good boxes that you're going to be destroying, and the blades will spawn underneath of you and not hit you because you're too high above them for them to hit you, which means that you can essentially chill out and heal as long as your tank isn't taking the shredders close enough that the like flamethrower is going to be hitting your character when they do the flamethrower aspect. So that has helped a lot as well. So I'm hopeful about Floodgate and how these tuning changes are working, that it's going to become a better and better dungeon to run. I still wish there was a way to skip Bubbles, the big fish downstairs. I think that is something that you should be able to skip and make up percentage elsewhere. I dislike that it's essentially another boss that you have to defeat because there's no way to skip it. So I want something in there to skip that. I think that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, Floodgate, obviously a new dungeon in the pool, brand new dungeon, never been played before, never been in Keystone before. It's needed the most attention, probably, in my opinion. It's gotten a lot of attention.
Yeah.
It was funny because the night before these came out, we were doing like an 11, I think, Floodgate, and just getting wrecked by RPGG and Thunder Punch. Thunder Punch still really hurts even after the nerf. But it is what it is. You just gotta load something up for it. I think the Swamp Face thing, you can kind of see like a faint, like a transparency of like the vine, like when it's going to come in, but it doesn't really matter if you're doing this right. Like you kind of mentioned, like if you're already in position, like it's just everything's overlapping anyway. So yeah, overall, I mean, it's feeling a bit better. It's gotta, I think they probably still need to dial it in a little bit more in terms of the tuning, but it's okay. I don't think it's like scary at this point, but it's definitely one of the harder dungeons in the pool. With bubbles, I think you can effectively skip bubbles if you have invis pots, because you could go in the water around him where all the crocs are, and like you can invis pot past them, but it's kind of dicey. And I would say even up to like 12, you can probably just handle bubbles. The best thing to do is make like a triangle, because he does like the bubbles that persist. They persist through like 2 casts worth of time. So if you position him like in a triangle a little bit in front of the bridge where he spawns, you can kind of beta set, move to the side, beta set, move to the top of the triangle, and by the time you're baiting that third set, the first set is cleared. So at least that way like healers can pre-position and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, Bubbles has caught some nerfs. He is definitely threatening, but it's not his fault. He's just a mud skipper who, they're trying to blow up his house or whatever's going on in there. So, we're still learning. This is the dungeon we're still learning the most about too, and it's also receiving kind of a lot of fixes. So, which is exactly what I expected, right? When I heard there was a new dungeon coming in, it's not a mega dungeon and it's going to be in the pool. I'm like, all right, well, this is going to be. We're taking the ride with this one for sure. So.
Well, I think
it came in better than a lot of dungeons that we've seen, right? That are like coming as patch dungeons and they're just way too hard out of the gate. I don't think Floodgate was like that, but I do think it needs a little bit more attention.
I think initial Floodgate was like that, but it got the attention quickly. That's what I think happened to that, because the initial Floodgate was really like the AoE damage that happened during the Vine boss was. Like Swamp Face was substantial.
Oh yeah, Swamp Face was like
it
really
was
out
way
there,
overtuned in those initial versions. So, but if we're trying to if the reason why Bubbles is so angry is everyone's invading his home, allow us to kill trash packs equivalent to Bubbles' health, and then Bubbles becomes friendly and gives you friendly bubbles that give you a small buff for a period of time, right?
Make him who was that guy in that Cataclysm dungeon? Raz, the big Raz Smash, right? It's one of the time walking dungeons. It could be like that. Bubbles just runs in front of you and jumps on stuff. That would be great.
Exactly, right? Just let that be a thing where if you defeat certain packs, Bubbles essentially helps you out. That to me would be a cooler way to do it. You don't have to deal with the mini boss, but you still get the percentage of killing different trash elsewhere like that. I don't know. I like that more than dealing with the mini boss inside of that T-shaped area that you have to do that. So anyways, Workshop, the anti-personnel squirrel no longer targets players not in combat. In Priory, they addressed an issue where Baron Braunpike can fail to cast Castigator's Shield. That would have been fine. He could have just left that one alone. I'm fine without Castigator's Shield. In Rookery, the Stormguard Gorin's Dark Gravity Pole has been, the duration's been reduced from 6 seconds to 4 seconds, and its explosion radius is reduced by 20%. So keep that in mind as well for those Rookery runners. In Theater of Pain,
nice ones here. Rookery is an easier dungeon, but
it is.
Stormguard Gorin is the thing that's going to kill your timer, right? I think that's kind of the diciest part of the dungeon.
It is a nasty hallway. Yeah,
good changes here. I like it. I think that should lock in Rookery as more consistent. Again, all this comes with the caveat of you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how the bosses work and how the mechanics work. But just reducing how punishing they are, how much time you have to react to something is huge. So I think Rookery, one of the easier dungeons overall, but definitely just a nice little tweak, because man, it's frustrating when you have a good run going and then I don't know, something stupid happens on second boss and it just ruins the whole thing. There's not a lot of leeway with the timer in that one, so that could be a big problem.
And a lot of that second boss is just managing the debuff properly and people just not knowing how to manage the debuff properly. And someone dies and then someone blames that person for not pressing their buttons. And you're like, no, I just got the debuff twice. Theater of Pain, the nefarious Dark Speaker's Dark Winds can now be seen on the ground. this was hilarious to me because when this first came out early in the week, you were like, oh, that's so great. They have this beautiful, line in front of them for where the winds are going to go. And then the line didn't represent where the winds were going to go, which was hilarious.
Right. Yeah. It was initially like bugged. Yeah.
So you had we had this and we were like, great, I'm totally safe. Fortunately, I was on my boomkin. And then the winds that were supposed to go like 45 degrees to my left just like came straight at me and knocked me backwards, and I did my fancy spin around, leap back onto the platform thing to survive it. But it was one of those like, okay, that's not working properly. It's no good to have something that says where something's supposed to be and then it isn't going there. So I'm glad they fixed that early on. Zev, the Unfallen's crushing slam is now visually distant. Yeah, this was something also I noticed on Tuesday that was great. Distinct, not distant. So you can now see on this boss essentially like all of the slams have very clear outlines as to where they're going to go, including the frontal one that used to just like have this pattern that would travel along the ground forward and then he'd slam. It now has like, here's your strict lines. This is where this is going to be. And honestly, like massive quality of life improvements by doing these sort of added visuals to these bosses. So really happy to see that. Oppressive Banner's health was reduced by 14%. Bone Mag's Bone Spear cast time has been increased by 0.5 seconds. And they address an issue where Nefarious Darkspear's Deathwind's line visual could be wrong, as I just mentioned, and go to the wrong location. So I think Bone Spear is still like the thing that kills runs in a lot of the Theater of Pains, because they tend to happen when you're on those platforms. And if you're not using battle reses, it takes like 25 to 35 seconds for someone to run back to those platforms, which is really unfortunate. So I am glad to see this change, because hopefully that this creates enough leeway that people are actually able to get their interrupts in there. You do still need to like manage your interrupts properly on packs that have multiple mobs that can cast Bone Spear, but it is hopefully a little bit better for folks with that 0.5 seconds. We still saw it this week. I was doing keys this week, and we literally like, I interrupted one as a boomkin, which then has a 1 minute cooldown, and then someone else interrupted one of the ones with a melee interrupting one, and unfortunately the other person also threw theirs in there, so 3 interrupts went. There wasn't a 4th interrupt from the healer, and so the next cast went off and just one-shot someone in our group, and you're like, yep, that's Bone Spear, that's how that works. So it does still need to be managed properly. It is tricky that way, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, those packs where you have like the dark speakers, there's nasty stuff mixed in everywhere. The Deathwinds thing was just kind of a bummer initially, because we have so much stuff updated in this patch where stuff reads really well. Stuff is clearly delineated as where it's safe and unsafe or whatever. And Deathwinds didn't get any kind of an update initially. So you were just you had to just really pay attention to the facing. And I swear, sometimes those things move. I've only been caught with maybe one so far this season, but like sometimes it seems like
the mob turns in the last second.
Like 15 degrees, like right before it shoots. So, that can still be a problem. But yeah, you have those, and then you have the Bone Maguses in there, and like Bone Spear's so brutal. Then you also have the other guys that do the volley, and you just have to make sure that you have assignments ready to go, because again, like we were just talking about, like second boss area is where you're going to break a rookery timer. Ghost boss hallway is where you're going to break a Theater of Pain timer. You start like the Bone Spear deaths or Deathwind's deaths start creating this like domino effect where, all right, now you're down one person, you don't have interrupts, you don't have stuns, you're doing less damage, stuff is dying slower, now somebody else dies, and then it just keeps going. And even if you could salvage the pull, now you're standing there for 30 seconds while everybody runs back or whatever. You can't really keep going because you got to keep everybody together because you're teleporting up to another platform. Like it has these knock-on effects, as you lose people. So definitely important to execute. Having better information helps a lot, and having an extra half second to hit a Bone Spear should help a lot. So like these changes, like they're hitting like all of the stuff that feels the worst in all these dungeons, I feel like.
Yeah, I understand why it works the way it works. As far as the it brings you to the first platform, you have to run through that to get to the second platform, you have to run through that to get to the third platform. And as much as I would love to be like, yeah, they should totally just make it so that whatever the farthest unlocked platform is the first one it takes you to on the most direct path, so you get back substantially faster when you're doing those runbacks. I understand the reason they're doing it is because, hey, if you want to clear more trash on those platforms, for whatever percentage or something that you're doing, you then can't get back to them because you keep skipping over all of them, and that creates a problem for routes for folks. I feel like they need that advanced skip button that's at the very end on each platform. So if someone wants to activate that on each platform, they can, which then goes, we're locking this platform out. You're not going to be able to get back to it again. You're going to go automatically to the next platform. I think that to me would be a neat thing to have, or at least have a midway point that does that. I don't know. I feel like those runbacks are substantially more punishing than they should be. All right. Oh, speaking of which, actually something else they added, which I don't think is in here inside hotfix notes, but I might be wrong. But one of the other things they added was there's now a emote that will happen inside of dungeons, an announcement that will happen inside of dungeons when you've unlocked a further ahead respawn point inside of that dungeon. I noticed it inside Priory, where once you've killed a boss that then moves your graveyard up, there's now an announcement that happens inside of your chat log that shows, hey, this is, but defeating this, you now have a new point farther into the dungeon where you're going to resurrect, which I think is actually a great
it's
addition.
just like instance updated respawn location or something like that. It's not brand new. I don't know exactly when they came. It's relatively recent, but I don't know exactly when it came in. It's been in for a little while at least, but that's pretty good to at least let players know, like, okay, you are now at the respawn checkpoint.
Yeah.
Because then if you catch that, then you know, like, how many times have you had a situation where
you're
doing a keystone, somebody died. Yeah, should I release? Well, I don't know. I can't remember where the respawn point is, whatever. Yeah. And then you go, just release. And then it wasn't the play.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. I mean, that happens all the time. It's still going to happen with this, but at least if somebody catches it, then you go, okay, all right. Yeah, we got, we do have a new respawn point. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead and release.
All right, as far as Liberation Undermine, the raid goes, they have continued to help fix group scaling. Now, none of these changes affect 30-player groups, but they did do substantial scaling difficulty reworks to basically 10-player groups all the way up to 30, where those 10-player groups, it'll be a substantially easier raid than it previously was, because they just noticed there's a lot of abilities and health pools and everything else that just aren't working on Raid Finder, normal, and heroic difficulties for those low group sizes. So damage is being lowered across the group, like a bunch of stuff's being lowered to make it more manageable for those flexible groups. So that hopefully will help out a lot of people. They also made it so that lingering voltage off of Rick Reverb now scales with group size as well to make that more manageable as well. On Mugsy, on Mythic difficulty, the Galagio Goon's goal break now functions the same as on other difficulties. As well as for Chrome King Galliwix, the flap in the House of Chrome should now reappear on Galliwix's defeat, which means, hey, you don't have to just jump off the platform as the fastest way to get out of the dungeon. So the other thing is we've now gotten far enough, if you keep forgetting you have this, which I have on numerous occasions, you now have the 30-minute timer teleport to the Incontinental Hotel. So you can use that at any point throughout the dungeon as well, just to go back to the start of it, if that's something you need to do. So don't forget you have that, card from doing just boss kills on the weekly basis, getting reputation bonus that'll allow you to just go back to the front of the raid. So that's also super helpful.
That's a really cool addition, especially with the way the raid's laid out. Like after you kill like the first 5 bosses, then you got to go back basically to the beginning so you can get into the casino. Yeah. So it's really nice when you get out to we always do Sprocketmonger 5th, and then you're like way down in the in the far outer area of the zone, and then we were just dying before, but now you don't have to die. You can just use your item, port right back to the hotel, and you're ready to go.
Everyone jumps into the meat grinder, and then you're good.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
What's happening?
It's a pretty nice. 30 minutes is maybe a little much, but it's still a nice addition to have, and it's a cool thing to include in the Renown track.
And for those who haven't explored upstairs inside of the Incontinental Hotel, when you're inside the raid, it has the item upgrade vendors there. You can place crafting orders there. There's a whole bunch of stuff in that upstairs area. So if you're ever like, oh, I got my tier piece or I got a piece of loot, but I don't want to put on until I upgrade it, as far as you can just go back to the front of the raid and dump a whole bunch of crests and stuff into it if that's what you want to do and throw it on. So that's another thing to keep in mind about that Incontinental Hotel teleport. Okay, item rewards. The developer's damage basically increased the initial damage effect by 20% on the majority of Season 2 trinkets that do damage. So if you had a Season 2 trinket that did direct damage to something or did damage to something, like the Blastmaster 3000 or the Mr. Lockenstock, the Gear Grinder spare keys, those sorts of trinkets that just dealt damage. They just buffed all of them by 20% to try and help them be relevant trinkets because they were all not very good. And so that's meant that a few of those trinkets for folks have moved up the priority list. So be sure you're checking that. They also reduced the healing of Mr. Pick-Me-Up by 10%. I think it's still one of the best healing trinkets in the game. So I think a lot of people are still wearing that, but that was something that came in. The Noggenfogger Ultimate Elixir, they fixed an issue where the Summoned Guardian was scaling with unintended class-specific attack speed modifiers. In other words, if you had a lot of attack speed, this thing would act crazy in how it would behave. So you want to keep that in mind. You're using daggers, which means your Noggenfogger Spawn Guardian is substantially faster in attack. Yeah,
I have to make a confession here on air. There was a lot of unintended weird scaling behavior with Noggenfogger Ultimate Elixir, which included things like the Time Walking Mage Tower.
Oh.
So I may have used this to my advantage because I'd never done the Time Walking Mage Towers. And a little birdie told me that this wasn't behaving properly. So what you would do is you would go start at least for the tank ones, it worked super great. I only had it available on 2 characters, but what this does is it summons a pirate who then just like attacks stuff for you. Well, it would just murder the whole screen basically. Like you would kill you would kill whatever the thing was called. The first guy you fight in the tank challenge, like, would die in about 4 seconds once you pop the
oh my goodness,
the trinket. Yeah, like it was just absurd, and then you just burn down the rest of it and win. So I did it on the warrior and the monk for the Mog. I couldn't get one on the druid in time. I went and tried. Like I saw this fix, and I'm like, well, this doesn't say, because like they must have fixed all kinds of weird behavior with it, because like it wasn't really the attack speed. It seemed like, well, the pirate's not scaling with time walking, so it's just doing max level damage to the enemies in here, right? Like, so but I did get one on the druid, and I went in there and tried it, and it's like, well, okay, like there's a pirate and it's like attacking stuff, but they obviously have fixed this. So, I mean, like, needed to be fixed for sure. I'm sad, but like I get it. Like they had to. It was not behaving properly, but it was pretty funny while it was like that.
Oh. They also have updated the loot table, I guess, in Operation Mechagon on Heroic and Mythic 0, so that rings no longer drop out of there. And they fixed an issue where Gigazap's cap would fire every 12 seconds instead of the 6 advertised on the tooltip. So that's a buff to Gigazap's cap for sure, so that it's firing off every 6 seconds as opposed to every 12. Okay, April's trading post. This is the trading post preview for April. People are mixed on this from what I'm hearing, although I think it's actually kind of cool. You basically, the big monthly reward is an Arakoa style mask that you wear with a Darkmoon Fair or Eye of N'Zoth kind of eye that sits in the middle of it. So if you're someone who's, big on Sethune, Eye of Sethune, wrong old god. If you're someone who's big on that kind of appearance and look, this is a pretty cool thing. But I will say, getting just a mask again versus getting an entire transmog outfit is something where, again, I can understand people kind of being curious about how they choose what the monthly thing is going to be, because it's never consistent versus like a mount, an entire transmog, a wristwatch transmog, a mask transmog, an entire body transmog. And you're like, okay, it's a little inconsistent. So I will say this is a very cool mask. I do dig this mask. It'll be fun to have. I don't know if I'll ever wear it, but there's not a lot of bird masks out there, and I like the coloration on these with the eye in the middle. So
it is cool looking. Yeah. I feel like there's definitely a segment of the player base that this is going to mega appeal to, and I mean, man, how many times have we seen people asking for playable Arakoa over the years since 2007? This isn't that, but like with the right Mog, your character could certainly really look like an Arakoa. So it's a cool design. I think it's fine. Like, the bonus reward thing is all over the place, and I think it's a weird to me, it's weird to get too tuned up about it one way or the other. They've done some awesome bonus rewards. They've done some pretty bad ones. It's like, I don't know. The trading post is just not, it's not a huge level of concern for me. It's just free stuff for playing the game is the way I kind of approach it. But like, I know there are people who really love the Dark Moon Fair aesthetic. And if you're one of them, like this month is huge for you. And also a lot of the accessories and weapons and stuff they're selling will look great with the Jester Mog that they did
that's
a while back.
Yeah.
So you know, that's kind of where we're at here. There's also seems to be like a bit of a gardening vibe. That, like, if you want to look like a character from David the Gnome, if you remember that old cartoon, there's like an ensemble for that, and I think there's going to be some stuff you can hold in your hand, like the garden trowel, 2-hand axe. Like, there's some stuff in that realm too. So I mean, we haven't seen the full thing yet, or it's not out in the game yet. So, but it seems like those are two kind of flavors for April.
I will say 100%. I'm going to get the ensemble. I would have bought just the shoulders on their own. Mushroom shoulders to me are something that just you need to have on a druid, especially with all the mushroom cap hats that are in the game now from doing delves and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to the ensemble for sure. The mount falls into, as you said, the same category. This Violet Darkmoon Charger of that Jester outfit they put in that was really stylistic, and it sort of falls into the same realm of you essentially can have a mount that will match that. I think they're cool. I think it might be neat to see like a guild that all agrees to wear that transmog and ride this mount and just have this like bizarro Jester guild would be kind of a hilarious thing. Perhaps a Death Jesters guild.
Like Death Jesters? Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
But I think that might be kind of neat. So they could do something like that. I'm curious as to how much animations, as I always am with a lot of these things, happen. Like if the eye on the front of the horse blinks every now and then or looks around and stuff as you're on it would be, you know, really nice finesse touches. Same thing with a lot of these weapons that are out there and the masks, and like how these things behave visually is always something you don't know until you see them. So I'm looking forward to getting a look at that. But yeah, the April trading post to me looks all right. It definitely has something in it I'm going to buy. So I'm happy to see that. Okay. Vote for your favorite War Within dungeon. You know, earlier when I said you don't really know what the dungeon pool is going to be. This is the type of thing we're looking at. So Kyvax comes in and says, as we prepare for season 3 of Mythic Plus Dungeons and War Within, we'd like to know which of the 9 War Within dungeons have been your favorites to take on. When it comes to Season 3, we're planning to make sure the Mythic Plus rotation includes the top dungeons that you vote for in this pool. So this pool will be open for the next week, and so we have like another, 3 or 4 days of this left, so be sure you're participating quickly. And all votes are aggregated. If this is very close to a near tie result, the WoW team will decide the outcome of that decision. So yeah, you got to pick between Arikara, Cinderbrew, City of Threads, Darkflame Cleft, Operation Floodgate, Priory of the Sacred Flame, Dawnbreaker, Rookery, or Stone Vault as to which one is your favorite, and they'll make sure the top ones make it into the pool, top 3 make it into the pool. This is a challenging thing based off of loot tables, if that's something you're thinking about. Like, immediately my brain's like Cinderbrew. Cinderbrew's got to be in there. Why? It has a neck everyone wants. It has good trinkets. It's got, like, there's a bunch of good loot out of there. But you're like, but that's not my favorite dungeon. But if it's not in the pool, is there going to be something that actually fills those gaps in the pool, right? Like Arikara, same thing. It has one of the best trinkets in the game that comes out of Arikara. So if that is one of it, like, how many people are going to have their sack broods in Season 3 if we put Arikara into the pool, right? Like, it's such a weird decision to make. You're like, do you make it based off how good the dungeon was, how fun it was to run? Do you make it, based off of the loot that comes out of it? Like, it's a complicated decision for a lot of players. So that's a tricky one that I think players will have to decide on what they want to do. I think we can all agree it's not Dawnbreaker, but otherwise, outside of that, we'll see what happens.
I mean, yeah, right now, Arikara is winning, and it's not really a dungeon I ever want to do again.
I know.
Like, I don't really care. I can't look at it from the loot pool perspective, because the loot pool is just gonna be whatever it is, and like, especially when it comes to a trinket or something, it's all relative, right? Like, whatever is available, you're gonna be picking. There's gonna be 2 trinkets that you want or whatever, right? Like, whatever they are is what they are. I don't like Sackbrood was good, but was it like really fun to use? Was it like so fun that we got to have that one again? Like, to me, no, I don't think so. So, you know, it's funny and kind of sad to see that one at the top of the rankings right now. I don't know how many of these are going to make it in. Like, I guess we'll find. They don't give us that information. Are we going to get like half and half? Are we going to get 8 of 9?
You get 3 of them. Then you get T3.
It doesn't. Where does it say that?
It says it is thing that when season 3 comes around, we're planning to make the plus rotation include. Oh, you said it's just the top. I just assumed there was the top 3, but yeah,
it's just the top dungeons. So like, I don't know how, like, is it just going to be like one of these is getting voted off the island essentially because they're going to do an 8 dungeon season? Are they going to do half War Within and half old dungeons? Is there something new coming in? Is there a new mega dungeon that has 2 parts and then they're going to do some other thing for the other 2 slots? Or, I mean, we don't have the information, but I don't know. Like, Eric Carapet, like, how many times did I like brick that key because we couldn't execute the last boss? Like, that last boss.
I know.
I mean, maybe if they do it different, I mean, it'll have updated visuals, so like where to stand will be clear, which will make it a bit easier. But like, it was okay, but it wasn't like, oh man, this is such a good key. I'll be sad when this goes away. I wasn't sad about that, you know? So yeah, I don't know. I look at it more from a perspective of like what's fun to play, or like what's a nice, quick, clean run to have fun with the team and get the dungeon done. The power level of the items or whatever is all relative and subject to change anyway for me. So like, I don't really look at it that way. But of course, I click on the poll results and it's like the number one thing that I don't really want to see. I guess Stone Vault would be the one I really didn't want to see come back.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah,
like maybe the number 2 one that I would be okay never doing again. Well, City of Threads too. Like, we could leave that one, but
don't worry. They're the bottom of the poll. I am disappointed to see Dawnbreaker is the second highest one in the poll. The only reason I can see Dawnbreaker being the second highest one in the poll is people think they can do it really fast because it was a fast dungeon.
It is fast,
but it is so problematic with people flying and falling through boats and can't getting the ships and not be able to get on ships and land on them. And there's so many bosses to me and pulls that are just really aggressive pulls that you need to do. I dislike it in a lot of ways where like it can spiral really bad really fast comparatively to some of the other ones. The third highest right now is Priory of the Sacred Flame.
No thanks.
Like, are you
I don't even want to do that right now, really.
Like yeah.
Again, trinkets, like who cares? Yeah. There's going to be good trinkets regardless of what dungeons are in the pool. They may not be the exact one, but like, again, I don't know, like, okay, the trinket from Sarkareth was really fun to use, right? Like, I could see if it was something like that we want to get this big bomb explosion trinket. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. So I don't know. It's a weird thing.
It surprises me to see that Cinderbrew, Darkflame, and Rookery are all below Floodgate currently.
Yeah, that's another one. Like Darkflame and Rookery are pretty fun. I mean, Cinderbrew, I guess you could make an argument for that's maybe on par. That's a little bit more difficult. Like, relative to the other 2, you'd think the easier ones would be more popular because
you think so, right?
They're kind of more fun, right? Like, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I don't have that sweaty mentality. I guess like I don't want the big challenge. I just want to have fun and crush dungeons. You know. Yeah. If I could vote for Grim Batol, I would vote for that. But that's we're talking about War Within dungeons here only.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. Vote in the poll. Whatever. We don't know like what the overall shape of the season 3 pool is going to look like. But if there's there's something you want in there, make sure to click the link, cast your vote, mobilize your friends. Like, oh, we got to get our favorite key back in the pool for season 3.
Yeah. All right. There's an update on DDoS stuff, but before we talk about it, we'll talk about this guild name change service that's in there, where now they're shifting over as of April 22nd. The guild name changes are going to be sold for 200k gold, 200,000 gold from guild masters in any major city, and the guild name change service is going to be retired from the shop, so you don't have to spend money to change the name of your guild. It's just 200k gold, and that'll be a service that comes available on April 22nd. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, so in other words, don't buy a cash guild name change for the next 3 weeks. I guess unless you'd rather spend cash than 200k gold. That's up to you, but that's the information you need to have.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Less cost.
This also makes me go, oh, well, April 22nd is probably the target date for 11.15.
It could be. Yeah, I worry a little bit this is going to lead to a lot of shenanigans for some guilds where they just keep the name changes every week. So it'll be a little weird to me.
Yeah, I'm sure there are
you end
people
up with
who just
stuff
want
like
to
that.
troll like that or
Yeah,
whatever. I mean, I would guess that only like guild leadership, like officer and above, could probably
for sure. It's only the guild
do
leader who
it,
can
but
do it.
like,
But yeah,
still,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, yeah, I'm sure you'll see a lot more frequent guild name changes overall without the the cash cost.
Exactly. All right, an update on the response to DDoS attacks. So, for those who've been unaware of the drama that has been taking place around the game currently, there's been a lot of DDoS attacks specifically happening during windows of time where the only Fangs guild on Classic Hardcore has been raiding. So, people seemingly, I will not speak directly to their motives, but seemingly choosing to try and target large streamers who are streaming their raid in a hardcore difficulty version of World of Warcraft to try and get their characters killed during the raid encounter. So they'd pull a boss, it'd be like a Nixia or something, they'd pull the boss, and within 10 or 15 seconds of them pulling the boss, suddenly servers get hit with a massive DDoS attack, and no one can really move or adjust or get out of stuff, and potentially characters will die in that window on a hardcore situation, which is pretty impactful and discouraging for the players in that situation. So these happened. I think we had 3 or 4 DDoS attacks in a 3-week period, which is more than we normally see. I was trying to remember the last time I saw major DDoS attacks in the years before that. And I had a very hard time trying to pinpoint when the previous one was, but I know there was one last night because at like 2 a.m, I got an alert from my BattleNet launcher that a DDoS attack was currently taking place. So there have been a lot of these attacks happening, and so they wanted to address what their reaction to these attacks is going to be, and then what they can sort of do to mitigate what's happening during these attacks. And I use the term mitigate because the only way to actually prevent DDoS attacks is to like massively change your infrastructure as to how everything works and how all traffic travels, which is something that I would imagine they'd probably have to take a lot of systems offline for a period of time to do. And so it's just very unlikely that would happen, but they can try and mitigate.
Even could do it, depending on the vendors they work with and whatever else. Like, it's a reality of the way the internet is kind of constructed in most cases. So,
well, and if you want something public facing that allows millions of players to log into it, you kind of are going to have to accept that people are going to be able to DDoS that login. And what that sort of means is, in most situations, you have computer farms that are pinging specific IP addresses and trying to hit them so frequently and so quickly that they're creating a load on those that is something they cannot handle, and that creates these sort of this big heavy lag spikes that you get. And so we experienced the unfortunate thing is these attacks that were seemingly targeting that particular community had affected everything. They affected Overwatch, they affected Hearthstone, they affected World of Warcraft Live, they affected all of it. We had to drop out of keys when it was taking place for 20 or 30 minutes while the DDoS attack ended because you could not run a Keystone dungeon during that window of time, which is why I think it's being addressed. It was just such a major thing that happened so frequently in such a short period of time that it got addressed. So Kyvex comes in here and says, we have begun resurrecting player characters that were lost during the denial of distributed denial of service, which is DDoS, attacks on our hardcore realms. Our preliminary focus has been on characters that died during the attacks on March 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, and we are expanding the scope of our review to consider resurrections of characters lost during confirmed DDoS incidents after those dates. For dead characters that were transferred from hardcore realms to normal realms, we have taken steps to return these characters to the hardcore realms in the state they were in prior to being transferred, and we have flagged them to be playable as though they never died when you next log in. You must go to the character login screen on your hardcore realm and log into the previously deceased character to complete this process. In the event of future character deaths due to DDoS attacks, we will only restore characters that remain on their hardcore realm. Please note that in future, should your character die due to a DDoS attack on a hardcore realm, it cannot be restored if the character is subsequently transferred to a normal realm. So in other words, if your character dies during a DDoS, give it a week or two before you move it over to a normal realm. You might get resurrected based off of the new policy they're putting in place. They're continuing to strengthen the resilience of WoW realms and the speed at which we respond to character deaths on hardcore realms caused by DDoS attacks. As a reminder, Blizzard customer support cannot assist you in issues related to characters who have died on Hardcore Realms. Please do not contact Blizzard customer support with any inquiries regarding character deaths on Hardcore Realms. Thank you. So, in other words, yeah, don't open a ticket if your character dies during a DDoS attack. They're aware that it died during a DDoS attack. They will restore it if that is in fact a confirmed DDoS attack. And that is the new policy they have going forward. So it's good to see them acknowledging this. I'm with Jason that I don't really think there's a way to quote unquote solve DDoS attacks. They are going to happen on anything that is public facing on the internet, and all this stuff is public facing on the internet. So the biggest thing they can do is try to mitigate the punishment or the loss of time that players experience when something like this happens.
Yeah, I mean, this is controversial, obviously, to some degree, because hardcore is supposed to be hardcore. I feel like overall it's probably the right thing to do, because obviously, well, I don't want to say obviously, but you could put two and two together here, and the timing of the DDoS attacks lines up a lot with these OnlyFangs raids and stuff like that. I remember last Sunday. Yeah. Was it Sunday? Yeah. I'm sitting around playing. I'm trying to do some delves or whatever. I have a WoW stream up, not an OnlyFangs thing, but like, you know, stuff starts getting wonky. I end up getting booted out, and then OnlyFangs is raiding. That's why that lines up with the timing of this DDoS attack starting, whatever. And you know, it was about, I don't know, half an hour or so before stuff sort of calmed down and got put back together, which is like a pretty quick response to a DDoS, I think. I mean, at least for something like this. And yeah, you know, they lost a ton of characters. And it was like, well, OnlyFangs is over. They're just not going to do this anymore, because it's, you know, it's drawing this kind of attention. People are targeting them, and they're affecting not just them, but everybody who wants to use Blizzard services and play games that they have paid for or whatever. So, which I think was a good thing for OnlyFangs leadership to do. Like, it was a noble thing. I think the hope here is that if the actors who are like willing to rent botnets to like kill OnlyFangs streamers in hardcore for a chuckle, if it doesn't end up doing anything, then maybe they just stop, right? Like, maybe, I don't know.
That's the hope.
It might be a bit of a leap. Right? It's like, how do you get a troll to stop trolling, right? But like, if it doesn't work, then why continue to do that? Like, why continue to spend the money, spend the time? Like, it's, I don't know what, you know, you can make the argument that, well, this is Blizzard's fault and they should deal with it. And like, the rules are the rules, and they lost the characters, and maybe Blizzard should just be better about DDoS attacks. And it's like, maybe. And some of that is maybe true, but also realistically, what can they do? Like, there's always going to be some vector along which they can get DDoSed. And then the nature of a game like WoW and with the hardcore rules means that, yeah, you could definitely lose characters during that. So I don't know. I think having it be a thing that is at Blizzard's discretion is probably better. Like, you know, how they sort of tell you not to contact customers. It's like, if they're going to res your character, they're just going to make the determination based on their logs, and they're going to do it. I think that's probably the way to go. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, I guess. We'll see if this type of behavior continues from whoever these attackers happen to be. And we'll see. I mean, it's kind of unprecedented. I think, like, there have been situations where people have lost characters in hardcore because of server issues or whatever, or server instability or bugs or whatever. And Blizzard didn't restore those characters because of, you know, they made the justification that was like, this is a peril of hardcore mode, and, you know, you could have logged out or whatever. I don't know. I think it's a bit different when it's so targeted in this way, and then it also has these far-reaching impacts across, you know, not only just the people being targeted. So, well, hopefully it's a deterrent. I guess that's the way I look at it. It's like, hopefully, like, knowing that that Blizzard will do this means people just stop with the DDoS crap. Well,
so in a lot of the cases where the most common places where people lost characters previously wasn't inside WoW, it was inside Diablo. And it wasn't during DDoS attacks. It was the servers themselves were having trouble handling the load of players, and there were bugs that would disconnect people, and people would be disconnected and they'd die as they disconnected or just after they disconnected, because their character would still remain on the realm for 5 or 10 seconds after they disconnected. and so it would be killed during that window when they couldn't push their buttons at all. And those issues were not DDoS specific related. Those issues were just like, hey, server load's really high because there's a lot of people playing. Hey, it's a new game and you're choosing to play hardcore and there's bugs. And unfortunately, a bug happens and this happened to you. And, we're taking the stance that we aren't going to resurrect those characters. In these situations, yes, we're talking about a targeted DDoS attack against Blizzard services that affected wide-ranging, player bases across different platforms, different games. So, yeah, I think it makes sense that they look at this a little bit differently. And I also think it makes sense they make the decision in-house. What you don't want to see is someone going, hey, I lost my hardcore character, quick, DDoS the servers, I might get it back. That you don't want to see. Now, I will express that DDoSing servers, especially ones that are made to handle millions of players, it costs a lot of money. It's not cheap to do something like this. So the people doing it are investing either a lot of money in hardware or a lot of money of their own money to rent places that actually do this sort of malicious attack. And so it is not cheap to do. It is quite expensive. And so I think that is another, hopeful deterrent is if the, as you said, punishment for being DDoSed goes away by them resurrecting characters, maybe people feel like, as you said, it's not worth the money or the energy or the effort to do those sorts of attacks. Okay, 11.1.5 PTR notes. These are notes that are up currently. Horrific Visions Revisited. Oh boy. Okay, so they've decided to move the enchants to the helm slot. This should allow all classes to be able to use them. They also consider the embellishments, but not as noted balance against existing embellishments would still have some players and specs feel that the 11.0 effects are better and not allow them to partake. So they're moving around the embellishment stuff as well. And then with this change, they are, and this is for the, just to clarify, this is for the corrupted themed enchants from Horrific Visions that are happening. With this change, they're going to double down on the enchants and bring extension of the Horrific Visions Revisited feature, where players will see a quest that now follows the introduction quest that will allow you to unlock enchants. These work similar to the cloak quest of the past, where the second will ask players to venture further into visions, and they're currently planning to keep these enchants working until the end of Season 2. So I dislike, in general, I have a distaste for Horrific Visions. I still dislike the concept of them. They are coming. They are going to have some of the best things in the game. You're going to be doing them. We'll see how it goes once they're out and they're here and people are doing them. But yeah, there's going to be features around your helm and being enchants on your helm and how these enchants work. And it's going to be a thing. So just keep that in mind. Right now, you can go to Trinketor inside the PTR and actually test out these enchants to see what they feel like. So you can actually see what they're like and play around with them if you want. I don't know, man. I'm still on the fence about Horrific Visions, if not leaning towards I dislike that this is a feature coming back, but that's just me.
It's really going to depend on the overall implementation, obviously. I have a feeling it's going to be tuned a lot easier and more generously than what we remember from BFA. It has to be, right? Like it was sort of, yeah, and like this is a .5 patch. There's good news and disappointing news in this little section for me. I think moving the enchants to the helm slot is fantastic.
Sure.
Big, huge win because it doesn't compete with anything else. This is just additive, right? Yeah. Like if it was going to go in a traditional enchant slot or if it was going to be an embellishment, now it's competing with power we already have. It doesn't feel like an upgrade. Now it's just additive. You get a cool thing. You get to put on your helmet. You have more power now. The downside is it's only going to be available through the end of Season 2. So it sounds like it's just it's going to be like a temporary thing, almost like
it's to me it's
Cersei Circlet.
Cersei Circlet lasted longer than that. To me, it's this is a test. This is like a brawl.
Maybe.
They're putting in at this stage. By the time this launches, we're going to have the 6% increased damage from our raid. So a lot of the raiders out there are already going to be doing 6%. We're going to be like 8 to 10 weeks into the raid content that's out there. So a lot of it's going to be older content now. They're throwing this in there as it only works till the end of Season 2, which means it's only going to be around for a couple of months, if maybe 3 months kind of situation before it goes away. Like this, I feel like that is their way of kind of accommodating towards players like me, where I'm like, I'm not really keen on farming this and having to do this, but I'll do it if I have to. Is them going, all right, well, do it, get this thing, but it's not critical to your character because you're not in prog at the moment, kind of idea is what they're kind of leaning towards, which I think is fine to hear. It's just, it's a weird thing to throw in a .5 patch. And it's a strange thing to only be viable for a couple of months. It seems like there's a lot of time being invested in a system that is potentially not going to be around on a go forward. Like
it seems like a lot of work for something that's probably going to live for 4 months. I mean, obviously this stuff is subject to change. The current plan may change if if players really like having these enchants and they're popular and people like doing the stuff, whatever, then maybe the plan changes. But yeah, I mean, I like the fact it's going to be straight up additive, but I don't like the timing. I feel like it should just be in for the rest of the expansion at that point. But I mean, we'll see how it feels. Horrific Visions were pretty hard when they came out. It was something you really had to sort of learn and micromanage, and you had like
there were
currencies around it.
Yeah, they were punishing because you can only do so many a week. So you had to get done what you needed to get done.
Yeah,
you had to get a high enough score in the first few that you did, otherwise you just couldn't get the rewards you wanted to get for the week and you were trapped out of it, which created this pressure. And then on top of that, they were difficult for a lot of classes. So it was like this like double-edged sword of you're doing something that feels like don't screw this up, don't screw this up, don't screw this up. And I hope I have a good run, I hope I have a good run, because you have to do it within a time limit too. So it's like there's this pressure of don't screw it up and do it as fast as possible, which is like totally contradictory to each other when it comes to doing that content for a lot of players. So yeah.
I mean, hopefully it'll feel nothing like that. It shouldn't, because it's kind of pointless. Like it was a key feature of the end of BFA because you had to power up the corruption resistance on your cloak. You had to be able to. It was a system that over the course of time let you build up more and more corruption resistance, so you get more and more power out of the corrupted gear to the point where by the end of the season, like you were just blasting away. This is you're unlocking an enchant that is additive for some extra power. It's not going to be anywhere near the level of what rank 8 Twilight Dev was like at the tail end of BFA. That is not what they're building for us here. So I got to think that overall, it's just going to be a lower curve, much lower investment, and more just like a thing to check out. Unlock the enchants that you want, get some catch-up gear, get some collectibles, and just have like this other thing that you can do. If you're kind of done with delves or you're done with the 11.1 stuff, here's some other thing to do. I think if it doesn't land there, that's a big mistake and a missed opportunity, because this should just be fun with the small benefit of the enchant being this cool callback to corruption. So we'll see. Well, I haven't played PTR as usual. I just don't have time for it in my life with the way things are for me in this phase of my life. So PTR is just like not a thing I can do. I haven't heard anybody else talking about it, but I haven't really been like looking for PTR reactions to what Horrific Visions are feeling like. So yeah, I can't imagine that they come in anywhere near the state that we're used to from BFA though, right? Like that's just our trauma that we're carrying forward years later. It would be such a mistake to have them feel anything like that in the current state of the game, and for a relatively small feature in a .5.
Yeah. I hope we're correct on that, but we'll find out what happens with it. Okay, the Warbound drop unlock. They have new items that are going to be unlocked. Unlock the veteran and champion drops in Horrific Visions to be Warbound until equipped. So you'll be able to find these things. And be able to help out catch up gear with your characters as well. These are found on the champion and heroic weapon vendors and unlock under the same conditions. So essentially you'll be able to get these warbound veteran and champion pieces for your warband. So they fixed skip areas where players try to skip through void corruption now damaged through immunities. So people are not able to skip through those with some routes. Some additional spawns have been added on alternative paths, so that's something to keep in mind as well. The construct of Soradormi Healer should no longer apply damage over time effects on enemies that haven't been hit by the player, and the construct of Soradormi will now run around the player instead of running away when they get aggro. So you're not chasing down your follower. This happens all of the time. where they just take off running and you're trying to actually catch up to them to be able to pull stuff off of them and defeat it, which is a problem. The cooldown manager, mouse over tooltips, have been added to the edit mode options, so be able to actually see mouse over tooltips in that. And known issues, apparently they're trying to fix issues with the group finder not working properly in PTR build, so they're getting that resolved if you've been trying to use the group finder. So yeah, lots going on in PTR.
Yeah, and we're probably only like 3 weeks out from patch coming, so yeah. We're gonna have a lot of new stuff to do in this patch. This is sometimes the interstitial patches are more just like, well, here's some changes and here's some quality of life and here's a little bit, but we're gonna have this. We're gonna have the boss rush mode. We're gonna have the new outdoor and scenario stuff coming in. So, which I think is cool because like really, there's not a lot in Undermine the Zone to do after a certain point, which is cool. I'm actually glad about that, but I think it's a good opportunity to just step in and freshen up some other outdoor world stuff and some other like solo or small group content to do. So yeah, I mean, it does feel like pretty early in the process, but it's right around the corner, really.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, James, Garrett, Kapawi, Cobra, Max, and Shorel. Thank you so much for all that you contribute to the podcast and the Patreon. We appreciate you very much, as well as all of our patrons, both past and present, those who are still with us and those who have been with us this whole time and those who helped out where they could. We appreciate all of you and all that you give towards the show. It helps us keep the lights on and the show running on a regular basis. It allows us to do this extra recording this week after this episode to make sure you have something from us during the week where I unfortunately have to be away, which is the first time that we've had to do an episode like that in like years and years and years. I think it was probably 7 or 8 years ago last time something like that had to happen. So yes, we're making sure that still is an episode for that week for folks that are out there and they can still get it. And yeah, with that, if you're trying to find the Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/thestartingzone and you can hop in there and support the show. Just be sure you do it on your PC and not your mobile app. The mobile app carriers will all take an extra 30% cut from everything for themselves. So be sure that you're not paying extra for jumping in and not having funds go towards the show. Be sure you do it on your PC if you're going to join the Patreon.
Absolutely. Thank you, patrons, for all the support over the years and for helping us keep the show on track, keep it going, keep it in production. And we couldn't do without you, sincerely. So thank you for that. And yeah, that advice applies to all Patreon campaigns. Go directly to Patreon's website. Don't go through an app store thing or whatever, because the platform holder is going to skim off the top, and then that doesn't work for anybody. So, I do this as well with any Patreons I contribute to. Make sure you go in through the web. Yeah.
If you want to support the show, another great way to do it is by heading on over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. We got one this week from Andy DeGhost. It says, terrific information, approachable format. If you are a current WoW player, or even just a former WoW player who wants to keep up with what's going on in the game, because let's be real, very few people ever really quit WoW, this podcast is for you. The hosts are super cool, informative, and they do a great job of helping me keep up with what's going on in Azeroth and beyond. Great for a weekly listen if you're waiting for Tuesday maintenance to end. Join the Discord. It's super full of chill and helpful folks. Keep it up, you guys. You are appreciated. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for sending that in. We appreciate you as well for listening to the show and leaving us that 5-star. And yeah, definitely hop into the Discord if you want to hang out with some cool folks. There's definitely some great information there. Even if it's not coming from Jason and myself, there's a lot of very knowledgeable WoW players in there who approach the game in different ways. So we've got everything from like heavy gold farmers to, hardcore raiders to really casual players to achievement hunters to they're all sorts are in there. So it's really a useful group of folks to chat with. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Andy, for writing. Andy hangs out in Discord quite a bit, so always nice to see you around there. And thanks for taking the time to write a review for us. We appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words, and glad to have you aboard. Thanks.
Yeah. And with that, I guess if you're trying to find and reach out and contact us, you can go over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. We're going to wrap up episode 677 of the Starting Zone. And if you want to contact us, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at the Starting Zone or on Blue Sky at thestartingzone.bsky.net or over on Discord. Like I said, you can join our Discord server by going to thestartingzone.com/Discord and clicking the button over there. And if you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, our store is going to be like migrating a little bit. Apparently TeePublic, who we're currently with, that's teepublic.com/store/thestartingzone, has been bought out by someone else. And so there's a little bit of shenanigans happening there that we need to rework, but that's currently where you can go to get yourself some stuff. I think it's up for like another couple of weeks, and then we'll have to do something else with swag stuff for folks. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me, you can find me over on Twitter or on Blue Sky. It's at Shieldwald over on Twitter, and it's jlucas at bsky.social over there. I mostly post stuff on Blue Sky, but I do check both places, so you can come say hi. You can check out video channels at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Streams have been quiet since I've been ill, but I'm probably going to bring them back this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, for raid and dungeons and stuff. So come say hi over there. I just didn't want to be like hacking and sniffling and stuff into an open mic the whole time. Yeah. That doesn't make for good stream content. So I've been away, but I think we'll probably get it going back again this week. And I haven't had a chance to do any retro streams lately, but I want to get some more Pokemon streams going as well. So check out the video channels. We'll get some stuff going this week probably.
Nice. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Blue Sky at spencerhd.bluesky.social, over on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD or youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.